Ladies and gentlemen, the cameras are rolling, the microphones are on. A warm, no pun intended, welcome to the City Council chamber for tonight's City Council meeting and Committee of the Whole meeting. I proudly call the City Council meeting to order, and I kindly ask our City Clerk to please take the roll call.
Bowering. Here. Bruno.
Here.
Ruby. Here. Kilberg.
Here.
Kasserag.
Here.
Maladra.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Mayor. Here. Paschke. Here. Swanson.
Here. Alderperson Paschke is chairing the Committee of the Whole meeting tonight, and she has the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance as well. So there you go. Did he call it?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Martha. Did you really, you guys had a side bet going? I will give credit to the city clerk. I said, who leads the pledge? She said, who's that lady in the far left? I said, that's Martha. Ladies and gentlemen, item 3, public hearings, special items and presentations. Item 3A is to proclaim Juneteenth Day, which of course is this Wednesday, the 19th. Juneteenth Day in the city of Geneva. We have a proclamation, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Paschke makes the motion, Mayor makes the second. For those of you who are well aware and those of you interested, we will be raising the Juneteenth flag. Our thoughts are to do so tomorrow evening, since I'm certain folks will be busy on Wednesday morning and evening. So likely, I'll email everybody, but likely tomorrow evening around 7 o'clock. So with that, any questions or comments? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Item 3B is to consider mayor's appointment of Heather Reeby to the Ethics Commission of the City of Geneva. Is there a motion by Marks, seconded by Bowring? Is Ms. Reeby here tonight? Okay, good. Any questions or comments? If not, a voice vote is sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Fantastic. And item 3C, consider mayor's appointment of Andrew Tobler to the Historic Preservation Commission. Motion by Paschke, seconded by Bowring. Please note for the official record, I have, and I accept full responsibility for this, misspelled Mr. Tolber's last name. There's only one B, not two, so we will correct that in the record as well. Mr. Tobler, I did not see Mr. Tobler come in. Oh, there he is. Yeah, welcome. Do you want to come up and say hey?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent, man. How's life in Westfield, right?
Doing great.
Life is
A
good?
little warm today, but yes.
Yeah, a little toasty, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
We're proud that you stepped forward, raised your hand, and said you wanted to serve.
Yes.
We had a brief conversation over the weekend. I'm delighted that you've accepted this opportunity to be nominated. Is there anything you want to share with all of us that you haven't shared on your application?
No, just thank you very much for taking the opportunity for me to serve, and hopefully I can do Geneva proud by keeping the historic preservation up.
You will. The learning curve is going to be steep, so we will put you in touch with our professional staff, and then we actually fly you to Hawaii for training.
All right, I'm there.
So, yeah. Yeah, your expense, yeah.
No problem.
And it's a one-way trip, so you can call in by Zoom for the meeting, so.
That'll work.
Anyone else for Mr. Tobler? And forgive me for the typo in your name as well.
No worries.
We have a motion, we have a second. Voice vote is sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Welcome aboard, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3D, ladies and gentlemen, is a public hearing on an annexation agreement by and between the City of Geneva, Midwest Industrial Funds, Geneva Park, LLC, and Midwest Industrial Funds, Geneva Park, LLC, and MIF Geneva Park Master Developer. Motion by Bowring, seconded by Kasserag. Before the vote, I just want to remind those in the public who wish to speak that this is regarding the annexation agreement only. This is not about the development. This is only about the annexation agreement. The city attorney, Mr. Sandak, to my left, and I have the responsibility and the privilege, as granted by the council, to ensure that any and all comments this evening are germane, and we ask kindly that you provide your comments in as cogent a way as possible. If someone has spoken and shared your comments, and you wish to speak and share them again, we would prefer that you say either ditto or what that person said. But if you have something new to share, then of course we welcome you to the podium. Those joining us at the podium, we kindly ask you state your name. If your last name requires spelling, please do so. Your address is not required. We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. A voice vote is sufficient to do that. All in favor of opening the public hearing on the annexation agreement as stipulated, and only the annexation agreement, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The annexation agreement public hearing is open. The floor is open to anyone who wishes to join us and speak to the annexation agreement.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Dashner, D-A-S-H-N-E-R. Last time I spoke here was a couple of meetings ago, and I wanted to reiterate some comments that I made at that meeting. Just as a general overview of this Southeast Master Plan development, it is interesting to see how considerably flexible that plan has become. There have been instances where the plan has swiftly transitioned from commercial to light industrial, or in some cases, we're using the Southeast Master Plan as the North Star as our development for the MIF development and its TIF district. At the last meeting, Kevin made it clear it was a binary choice. Either we met the requirements for the state of Illinois or we did not meet the requirements for the state of Illinois, as I understood the meeting. And I'm hoping that tonight's meeting might be a little bit more nuanced with regard to the annexation agreement and how it impacts on the development. So at the previous meeting that we talked at, there were several questions that were posed, and city staff put a frequently asked question blog up to address some of those questions. And I'd like to go through some of those questions and maybe amplify some of their answers, because I think it's important to understand them relative to the annexation agreement, because it all flows into that and how it will impact on us as citizens. The first question was the developer equity contribution. And that's on page 4 of that frequently, and I'll cite all the pages in case you haven't had an opportunity to read all those. I'm sure you have. The query was regarding the equity of the developer bringing to the table for the project. And city
John,
staff,
just to remember, this is not about the development itself.
It's about annexation
It's about annexation of the land.
and the agreement that's being put before the council this evening.
so control and oversight of the development is not relevant to the annexation agreement?
The annexation agreement is in as simple terms, and I'll defer to anyone else who wishes to correct me, is simply about annexing those acres into the city of Geneva's corporate limits, period.
Relative to your corporate agreement that you published?
Relative to the annexation agreement, that's correct.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that then, Kevin.
Sounds good.
So in the annexation agreement, there are several subsections that talk about how the city will allow the development to occur, correct? Am I within the parameters of your?
We'll see where it goes. It's not mine, it's the due process. If we're talking about annexation, we talk only about annexation. When there's an opportunity to discuss, as there was April 11th, the development, we talk about the development. Annexation was not addressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 11th. That's why this public hearing is taking place tonight.
So the documents that were in the annexation agreement that you published, are they relevant or are they not relevant?
I would argue that it depends on the strategy you wish to take.
It's not a strategy, Kevin. I'm just trying to understand the.
Then I encourage you to continue, and we'll merit those as we go on.
All right, fine. I'd like to draw everybody's attention to section number 5 in your annexation agreement. In the annexation agreement, the developer is going to submit final plans and approvals based on whatever they want to do. The city council, and the way the annexation agreement occurs is that the community development people will have final say on what is going to be occurring in that particular area. You look
Incorrect,
like-
but go ahead.
You looked like you were going to add.
Well, we're dancing on the knife's edge here, John. That is consistent with the development. Those, not appendices, but codicils within the annexation agreement certainly tie into what is later being discussed tonight, and that is the development itself. The development itself, as you well know, and everyone else in the room knows, and those tuning in probably know, the development itself, including such language, was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is not factual to state that all future buildings would be decided by the Community Development Department. It is fair to state that if those developments do not meet the, quote, substantial conformity, they would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council, which you and I corresponded with today, or about today. So I just don't want you to leapfrog into development and future buildings when we're talking about annexation of acreage.
Thank you for that clarification. Kevin, I appreciate your time, effort. I certainly appreciate the fact that I sent you an email over the weekend and you responded promptly.
Happy to do so.
And answered all those questions.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion from the council to close the public hearing on the annexation
So moved.
as described. Motion by, I believe that was Bruno, seconded by Marks. All in favor of closing the annexation hearing as described earlier, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The public hearing on the annexation, item 3D, has been closed. We move on to item 4, amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments this evening? Item 5 is the omnibus agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine by this council, and all those items can be considered and acted upon with one motion. Is there such a motion? Bowering makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Paschke. City Clerk, please take the roll.
All right. Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor? Aye. Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye. With 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 absent, the omnibus agenda has been approved by this council. We jump to item number, number 8, forgive me. Municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city clerk to read the bills in their aggregate for our consideration.
Municipal bills for payment total $5,281,859.51.
Mayor, I move that we approve and pay the bills as read. The individual items that add up to that amount can be found in tonight's city council packet on the city website.
Alderperson Bruno makes the motion to approve the municipal bills for payment, which appear in our packets and on the city council's website. Is there a second to the distinguished alderperson's motion? There is, by Alderperson Kasserag. Any questions or comments regarding those bills? If not, city clerk, please take the roll.
All right, Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Hilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor? Aye. Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
The municipal bills for payment have been approved by this council with 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 alderpersons absent. We jump to item 10, presentations of ordinances and resolutions. Item 10A is approval of ordinance 2024-18, approving and authorizing the execution of an annexation agreement by and between the City of Geneva and MIF Geneva Park J, LLC, MIF Geneva Park M, LLC, owners, and MIF Geneva Park Master Developer for 211 acres of property generally located south of the intersection of Illinois Route 38 and Couts Road and north of Fabian Parkway.
So moved.
Motion by Bowering, seconded by Kosarog. Ms. Dawkins, do you have anything?
Did you want just a brief?
Absolutely.
Okay, so as stated, the subject property is generally located east of Kirk Road from the intersection of Illinois 38 and Couts Road south to Fabian Parkway and would establish the City of Geneva's southern eastern corporate limit. Currently, the undeveloped property is located in unincorporated Kane County and consists of 7 parcels totaling approximately 211 acres. The applicant is seeking to annex the property into the city and develop the site as a Class A light industrial business park. Additionally, the project would include an extension of Couts Road from Illinois 38 to Fabian Parkway. Development will occur in multiple phases, with the first phase focused on mass grading, the extension of Couts Road, and supplementary infrastructure and stormwater improvements. Future phases of development would be based on market demand, and at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on April 11th, the commission unanimously recommended the City Council approve the requested zoning map amendment, preliminary final plat of subdivision, and preliminary PUD. Just so you know, I kind of did the introduction for all of items A through E rather than repeating each one. So as the mayor stated right now, this is just the annexation agreement.
On item 10A, council members, any questions for myself, for Kathleen Timoshenko, Director of the Group, City Attorney, Ms. Dawkins? If not, Alderperson Gilbert?
Would you,
Excuse me, Mayor. Marissa's trying to get your attention.
Now it's time for council members to ask questions. We invite council members to ask questions of either myself, Ms. Dawkins, City Attorney Sandak, Director of Community Development DeGroot, or Economic Development Director Timoshenko. Alderperson Kilberg has the floor.
this vote will require a supermajority, is that correct?
That is
Would you
correct.
explain the specifics as it relates to what constitutes a supermajority?
Annexing land into the corporate limits of the City of Geneva requires 8 affirmative votes by the council. I also cast a vote. That's as simple as that. Thank you, sir. Alderperson Ruby.
So we're just on 10A on the annexation?
Correct.
Okay. So just want to share my thoughts on the annexation. I think this stems from a vision defined over 20 years ago. In this time, we've had a great recession, a worldwide pandemic, a tectonic shift in the way people shop and work, and now AI is on the horizon. Are warehouses really what we want in the space that is Geneva's last chance for any kind of meaningful change or development? We are grasping at the first opportunity we've been offered, and we are settling. With all the warehouse vacancies in our area, including the Fox Valley Commerce Center, which has been on the market for over a year without a tenant, gives me pause. LoopNet.com shows 33 industrial spaces currently for lease in our area. Property Shark shows 50 properties. Add to that the proposed Venture Park mega warehouse boasting 719,200 square feet right here in Geneva. And now we are being sold on annexing to bring 12 warehouses to life. Who will rent all these warehouses? How will the truck traffic impact our town and carbon footprint? How will our air quality be affected? What about noise and light pollution? What if they never get rented or aren't kept up? I don't have the answers, but we must seriously consider these implications. If you think these are going to bring our community jobs, a quick search for the average warehouse worker salary shows the top 3 results in close alignment: $16.28, $17.76, and $16.52 per hour. Do we need new warehouse jobs, or are existing warehouse jobs available? Glassdoor lists 632, LinkedIn lists 600, and Indeed lists 735 warehouse job openings within a 25-mile radius of Geneva. This is the default range, and to be fair, no one making $17 an hour can afford to live in Geneva. Therefore, I think this default search is a good indicator of opportunity and need for these jobs. I understand and appreciate the work that has gone into this plan to get us here today, but my conscience will support what I believe is in the best interest of the long-term health and success for the City of Geneva. Annexing this land to bring warehouses to our home is solely a developer win. Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais? Alderperson Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize in advance. I was unable to give questions because I had difficulty opening the packet due to its size. So I do have some questions on the packet. I'm not sure if they relate to the annexation agreement, so help me through that. The first one was on page 95 of the packet, and that had to do with Geneva agreeing to build the electrical substation. Is that part of the annexation agreement? Okay. So my question there is, what is the consequence or liability to Geneva if we fail to build it by July 1st? I didn't see any indication of that in the agreement. And it's mentioned later on that we're not liable if the delay is caused by a force majeure event. However, what happens if it is due, or if it's not due, and there's still a delay?
Second. Force majeure stalls or tolls a clock. So if there's a force majeure event, there's no liability, and the clock picks up after the event concludes.
Understood.
Yeah, to the former, I think it's at or around that date, and there is a reciprocal responsibility between the developer and the city to get that work done. There would be a credit to the developer. If they do it, it would be on our dime otherwise.
Because we have had years of problems with supply chain, particularly with electrical. So it seems that that's pretty advanced. So are we comfortable that we're going to be able to do that work by July 1st?
I believe they are. I bet staff may have a better, more informed answer, but I believe there's confidence that can be concluded.
Okay.
And if are you looking at subsection 2?
Paragraph D2, exactly.
Yeah, so it says with a goal of completing, so that's not that's the goal, that's what we're working towards.
Sure,
But
okay.
that's not a hard, fast, dead,
Okay, and
date, but that's absolutely what we're working towards.
okay, and there are no consequences if we don't meet that. That was more my concern.
It doesn't, the annexation agreement does not list out any consequences.
Okay. Moving on, on page 96, paragraph D, part 4, it says that the city will provide a minimum 20 megawatts of capacity to the area of electrical power. What is our current capacity for the system, citywide?
Director DeGroot, or excuse me, Director Babica, forgive me, sir. Is Mr. Holton here?
No, he's not here.
Okay, yeah, I think so, yeah, so.
Respectfully, you're going to have to clarify that question a lot before I can answer it and give you an intelligent answer.
Okay, I will try to ask an intelligent question. We are committing to providing 20 megawatts of power to that area. My question relates to what does that, in relation to our system-wide capacity, what is that percentage?
Well, as a pure percentage of that, that's probably somewhere in the range of 20 to 22%.
Okay, so it's 20 to 22% more than what we're currently providing.
With our current contracts,
System.
we carry a 8 by 16 load of about 50 to 54 megawatts. And on a hot day like today, we're probably using more than an average, but
Sure.
on a normal day, we're not. So it is not a black and white question. That range is moving constantly on a daily basis.
Understood, but in general, over an average of a year.
Yeah, we have
20
the
to
capacity to handle this industrial park.
Okay, and I wasn't, the question isn't related to that. My question is related to, will there be an impact on current electrical users as we enter into contracts to add additional power to our contracts?
Well, again, we have long-term contracts that we just re-entered into about 18 months ago with NextEra.
Right.
That locked us into even lower rates than we were currently paying up through 2030. I'd have to look at that exact date of that contract, but it's a long-term contract. And then we have the base power supply out of Prairie State that is up through 2042, or life of that facility.
Right. So if we're adding 20% to those contracts, do we have the capability to?
I did not say we were adding 20% to that contract. What I
I-
said is
I-
that we currently have under contract about 50 to 55 megawatts,
Okay,
depending upon our daily needs. And that our average rate right now, our average daily usage is hovering right around 30 to 34.
Okay,
So I think it's inaccurate for anyone to state that we're adding load. The goal of this industrial park is actually going to be stabilizing the load and consuming the energy that we're already under contract to purchase, because our daily load factor has been dropping due to higher energy efficient appliances, lower consumer demand, and overall the rise of the solar market on residential and commercial properties. So that's what this industrial park's going to do, is it's going to consume some of that existing load we already have that's available.
okay. I apologize for inaccurately phrasing my question, but it sounds like our contracts have then the ability to absorb any additional.
Correct, and if we had a large user, like another Lineage that came into town, which would be a great thing for the electric utility, that would then be something we would happily look into modifying those contracts to accommodate that user.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, and this is not an electrical question, so this is, on page 108, paragraph B, part 3, there's an indication that a 10% decrease in open space or landscaping would be considered immaterial, and that could be allowed. And I was just wondering why 10%? That seems like a huge amount to me of open space and landscaping.
Are you referencing the,
Materiality.
yeah, the material, the substantial conformity
Yes.
issue,
Yes.
if you will? Mr. DeGroot, do you wish to address that, or I can have the city attorney address it?
A 10% decrease, we're looking at that for like the truck courtyards, where we would typically require internal parking lot landscaping. We require 10% of that parking lot to be internally landscaped, but when you have large truck courtyards, you don't want the trucks backing out over that landscaping, so that's where that decrease comes from.
Okay, that's not specified in the agreement, it's just kind of a general statement that we would allow that 10% decrease.
Right.
But, so you're saying it's more specific as to where,
I mean, that's,
We would
I think
reduce
that's
that.
where that generated from.
And,
Okay.
Alderperson, it, obviously, the section you're looking at also gives staff discretion,
Yes.
obviously, to negotiate those items.
Sure.
So the flexibility flows both ways, but it's in professional staff to make sure the requested relief makes sense and is in, again, material conformity to the overall plans.
okay. And the next question is similar on page, same page, paragraph B, part 5. There's, who determines if a decrease in the number of parking spots is immaterial? Would that be again you?
I mean, as it's written, it's subject to, yeah, my approval.
Okay,
But if I wasn't comfortable, I would bring it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
okay, fine. Moving on to page 197, 198, there's mention that retention storm basins will adequately collect and discharge stormwater on site. It seems to me that,
You're on the exhibits now,
okay, okay.
Yeah.
But
I'm
that,
just trying to catch up with you.
okay,
We're out of the agreement, we're on the attachments.
but it's still the agreement, itself.
Except so the agreement is contemplating what happens next, which are your consideration of the development plans. So those questions will actually come under the development plans. Just because they're attached to this annexation agreement, that's why there's a disconnection clause, so that if you don't approve development plans or you don't do something, they have the opportunity to then de-annex.
Okay. Okay, they're very interrelated, but.
They are
I
interrelated, but
understand you.
that's-
My next couple of questions have to do with PUD approvals, et cetera, so you're saying that comes
That-
later.
Tonight
Understood, but not in the annexation agreement, although
itself.
they're mentioned in the agreement.
Again, because it's kind of like a chicken and the egg, there's all the different things that need approvals. And so, but the first thing that has to come first is we have to have the land annexed to even be considering the other items.
Okay, I understand. I will ask my further questions at the next
Thank you.
appropriate spot. I will try to word them appropriately as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the dais regarding item 10A? Alderperson Mayor.
Yeah, I have a follow-up about, well, actually, I don't know if it's what Alderperson Swanson was discussing, but in the annexation agreement, it dictates the size, the capacity that we're going to offer to the developer owner for electric, and there's also a 12-inch water main. What happens to, like, if they get established and all buildings are built and occupants are in the buildings, and we determine that we way overestimated how much electric they need? Can we get reset so that we can use the spare capacity if there's an ability to do that? Because I wouldn't want to offer them 20 megawatts of power and have to keep that and not be able to offload it to other users if we need to. So like, in the future, does this still dictate?
Director Babica, because you are the representative of the utility, invite you to join us. Are we going to talk redundancy?
I was just thinking the good news is my knee doesn't hurt tonight, so I can move
That's
quickly.
good.
All our substations are connected interchangeably, so even though we're building that substation with the capacity, our substations back each other up, which is why we are known as one of the most reliable electric utilities within the nation, top 25%. So even though we're saying, and this annexation agreement says we're reserving 20 megawatts for this use, if it's not, and like say the Delnor substation is down, we can reroute and bring that energy throughout our internal distribution system to power up our substations. They back each other up.
So we can, in the future, if we have another tenant that needs 5 megawatts, we're not necessarily going to have to build a whole new infrastructure for that user because we have to reserve this 20 megawatts per this annexation agreement.
In a very general term, correct. But like General Mills, for example, we're building we're adding to the GBP substation out there, a dedicated, I shouldn't say dedicated, but we've added a third transformer to ensure that they have the power that they will need for their build-out.
Okay. I think
Geneva Business
that's-
Park, by the way, I threw out an acronym, I apologize.
So the annexation agreement says that we will provide a minimum of the 20 megawatts. So if they need, at which time they need that 20 megawatts, we have to provide it.
Even
So
if we have to
whether we have to move things around or do whatever, but it's not like we're setting that aside and just waiting and waiting and waiting and hoping they don't, they do use it. It's much like any other expansion that comes through or whatever, but we will know in our planning processes that we have this 20 megawatt requirement that we will have to take into consideration anytime we are doing
Has to
any
serve other areas.
other service. But it's not like it just sits there and waits,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
And water is similar, I would take it, that, we're giving them a 12-inch main, and if they're only using the capacity of a 6-inch main, we can still use we don't have to reserve the volume as well as provide the pipe size.
Well, the pipe size is a function of fire flow and fire suppression. which
So it's
is
mainly
industrial park.
dictated by the fire suppression systems.
Correct, and the towers support the mains, the distribution system. And then the booster stations support the towers, and then the wells fill
Right.
the booster station, so it all feeds off of each other.
Okay, I think I understand. I think there is a future time when it can be established how much their use is based on their actuals, and then we could use free capacity is all I'm getting at here, so that we can serve other areas without reserving this amount.
As I stated previously to Alderperson Swanson, I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off, but.
That's okay.
if we need to have more energy because of our base load is increasing, at that point in time, myself and my staff will go out and
And
secure
assess
that energy and then bring it forth in front of the city council. There are a lot of variables at play here. You've got the solar market. We have industrial users that are approaching us for solar power now on a fairly regular basis, and my staff is working with them on that. That decreases our load. So again, the whole idea is to stabilize our load so we're not in a position where we have more energy under contract than what we need.
Okay.
Needing energy is a good thing. That means we're growing.
No, I agree, and I think that this development is a good thing for our electric utility as well as for the community's tax base. I just wanted to clarify that. And the answer regarding the EV vehicles, I would really hope that this location could be used for EV charging and maybe,
That comes later.
That comes, yeah.
that's not the annexation
No.
agreement?
No, that's
No,
the.
Oh, I
that's-
thought that
that's-
was.
no.
That's the PUD.
Correct.
Okay, sorry. I'm done then.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais on item 10A? City Clerk, please take the roll. Again, 8 affirmative votes are required to annex this 211-acre property into the city's corporate limits, and I do cast a vote.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
Mayor Burns?
Aye. With 8 affirmative votes, 3 nay votes, item 10A, the annexation of 211 acres into the city's corporate limits has been approved. We move on to item 10B, approval of ordinance 2024-19, annexing 225.83 acres of property generally located south of the intersection of Illinois Route 38 and Couts Road and north of Fabian Parkway to the city of Geneva. Is there a motion by Bowering? Seconded by Kasserag. There's no preamble here from Ms. Dawkins, so the floor is open, or do you have a separate? No, floor is open for council questions. Sensing none, hearing none, seeing none. City Clerk, please take the roll. A simple majority is required to approve item 10B, and I also vote.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
Mayor Burns?
Aye. With a vote of 8 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative, 0 alderpersons absent, item 10B has been approved by this council. We jump to item 10C, approval of ordinance 2024-20, rezoning, zoning map amendments, property generally located south of the intersection of Illinois Route 38 and Couts Road and north of Fabian Parkway from RR Rural Single Family Residential District to the Light Industrial District upon annexation. Is there a motion to put this on the floor?
So moved.
Motion by Bruno, seconded by, I believe that was Marks.
Correct.
Questions from the council? City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kasserag? Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson? Bowering?
Aye.
Simple majority required. There are 7 in favor of, 3 against, 0 alderpersons absent. Item 10C has been approved by this council. We move to item 10D, approval of ordinance 2024-21, granting a special use permit for a preliminary plan unit development and preliminary PUD plan and Phase 1 infrastructure plan approval for Midwest Industrial Funds Geneva Park.
So moved.
Bowering makes the motion, seconded by Paschke. Questions from the dais? City Clerk, please,
No, no.
No.
I don't know if he was, that's fine.
Rich, did you have your hand up first?
No, I don't know, so go ahead. It's fine.
gentlemen
Mayor,
rules,
why don't
whoever wishes to go first.
Someone go first.
As it relates to the PUD,
Yes.
what is the history on the tree survey at the present time? I believe we have a dated survey. Obviously, a number of changes have taken place on the site, and I'm just curious as to where that might stand. Can David answer that?
I don't know. Mr. DeGroot, are you able to answer that question? And perhaps clarifying, tree survey from the one that we originally received, or the?
Right.
Okay.
I believe the one that was included in the TIF documents, if I can say that word, indicated that there had been a completed TIF survey, but since that survey, I believe, was completed, I think there have been a number of different changes that have taken place on the site. Can you tell me currently, as it relates to the PUD, what tree survey are we working with, if you have a date?
I don't have that date in front of me, but we did receive a revised tree preservation survey with the PUD application that identified all the trees that were to be preserved. That information was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission of the total number of trees being preserved, and then added to the site with new landscaping as well.
So we haven't taken a survey since the site have had changes?
Since trees were removed last year,
That's correct.
there was an updated tree preservation survey submitted with the PUD application.
At the April 11th Planning and Zoning Commission?
Right, that identified
Is
all
that
the
a part of
trees
the
that were to
documents that we
remain.
have?
It is.
Okay. Where was that cited? That, again, there was a lot of document.
There is. I don't have the page number in front of me. I'll
And-
find it.
And was our arborist involved in conducting the survey?
No, reviewing the survey.
Okay, so there was a review of the survey, but not a site inspection as it relates to the consistency between the survey that was presented and our arborist's review of that data.
Our arborist does visit the sites and reviews the assessments and
Okay,
provides comments on
So-
the survey.
so you're confident then that at the present time we have an accurate inventory and that the survey is technically correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the dais? Item 3D, excuse me, 10D. Alderperson Marks, then Swanson.
It's fine. Mayor, just, if this isn't the right time to discuss this, let me know. At the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, there was some discussion about Cherry Lane. When I watched the tape, I couldn't follow it because we don't see the actual screen. We see the speaker when they do that. Could they go over the Cherry Lane, how?
Do you wish the developer or our
The
staff?
developer, either one, who feels more comfortable doing it, if they could put the
David,
slide
I know
back.
Cherry Lane has popped up.
Is it
multiple
part of the PUD that I can ask that, or is that later on?
No, that's absolutely fair game. David, do you wish to, or Kathleen, or do you prefer? Cherry Lane has come up a multitude of
I couldn't
times.
follow it,
Yeah.
and that's all I'm asking. I know they gave an answer.
And apparently, there's no technology that exists where a pointer can be used at a meeting and seen on TV.
No, you can't. and
Mind-boggling.
it's fine, But
Yeah.
I just. No, I talked to Kathleen about this.
No, it's all good.
So there is an east-west right-of-way that is proposed on the Plata subdivision that would provide access to properties to the west. There's currently a piece of property there that is annexed and zoned light industrial. But the ownership, is dedicating the right-of-way to that western property line, but not extending it through to any additional properties.
But it gives them a right of way.
It gives them, it stubs to that western property line, so if there ever was a desire for future access or connection going westward to that point,
Okay, all right.
sure.
It can be considered.
It can be
Absolutely.
considered. It's not, I know it's not hard zone, but it can be considered by the city.
Correct.
And the people who own that. Okay. Then there was one other question that I couldn't follow, was a question about the water flow, how it flows into the open area
It all flows west, is that correct? Pretty much the water, the rainwater as it
I
rains, or
would,
does
I
it?
would defer
That may have to be one of you guys.
to their team.
But it was asked during the planning and zoning, if someone could just go over that.
We welcome you to the podium, and just please share your name for our benefit and of those tuning in.
Mayor, City Council, good evening. My name is Brian Johnson with Pinnacle Engineering Group.
Thank you, Brian.
We are the site civil for the project so far. With regards to stormwater and drainage and existing flows, there's a watershed line that kind of bisects the site. I want to say probably about a third of the site kind of drains to the northwesterly direction.
That's where that pond would be up there.
Yep, and that pond's up there, and then the remaining two-thirds of the site drains to the south and southeasterly direction. So the proposed development mimics those drainage patterns, if you will, and then we'd installed our stormwater basins meeting the county's requirements to mitigate, obviously, the additional volumes being created.
Okay, so how it's laid out right now, it won't affect any other property there? We've made it pretty much contain itself within
We
that?
tried to mimic the existing drainage patterns as much as possible, so where the existing water currently flows to, that's where our discharge locations
Okay.
are at.
All right. Fine, that answers my question.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
One other, and I believe this does go underneath the PUD. Could they explain again how they measure the 60 feet of the height of the building? Is that go underneath the PUD, or is, because that's in the PUD?
Yes,
that-
it is.
Yeah, they can go up to 60 feet without asking.
And here's
anyone.
Mr. DeGroot to answer the,
How they actually,
it's approximately 6 David DeGroots.
okay, got it. That I can understand.
10 David DeGroots.
No, it goes inside the building, right? Is it an outside measurement or, because they
From the
want to
finished
make
first floor to the peak of the roof or the top of the parapet wall. So
Okay, so that will
David, if you
hide.
could repeat that very slowly
Sure.
for everyone else. who's-
the finished first floor to the peak of the roof or the top of the parapet wall, if it's a flat roof.
Got it. So that helps hide the mechanical equipment on the top?
Correct.
then.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's 60 feet and then the mechanical, it's
And
gonna
then the
be
screen,
hiding.
no, right, it's to the top of the parapet wall.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Mayor, that's all my questions. I just needed
Oh,
some
that's great.
clarification.
Thank you. Alderperson Swanson's next.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions similar to that. The first one is on the retention storm basins as well. You mentioned that it's going to stay the same, and the water is going to continue to flow the same direction that it used to, and the flow would be the same. So we're obviously creating the basins to capture the water from the impervious structures. Are we not changing any of the items that caused the flooding that supposedly was impacting the Mississippi River? Because that was one of the items that was mentioned, is it is subject to chronic flooding. So given that, are we changing something to reduce that?
Yeah, so what we're doing, anytime you create impervious area, if you will, the amount of water being run off the site increases.
Sure.
Because you're converting grass where water used to infiltrate and you're putting a hard surface down. So what we do to mitigate that, and it's very spelled out in the county's code and local requirements, is you have to install some type of retention system. And what that does is it captures all that water, and then, if you will, it lets it trickle out at a very slow rate that's less than what the existing conditions are. So by doing that, you're taking and capturing all the on-site water. So if there's nuisance flooding or areas that were a pond, if you will, we would be capturing that water, routing it through our stormwater system, mitigating the flooding issues, and then releasing that at a very slow rate.
So you're building these basins larger than required for the impervious structure so that
Correct.
it captures more and slows down?
Yep.
So, okay.
So there's depressional storage that happens, so we exceed what the county's requirements are for the stormwater retention system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to get into the PZC meeting too. I thought the commissioners asked a lot of good questions. There was one particularly that I think the MWI people were going to look into, and that was, can public access to the wetlands be provided? And I think the answer that I heard was first no, or it's not required, but then the last thing that I saw in the PZC meeting is they said, yes, we will reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers and see if we can do that. Was that ever done? Can public access be provided to the wetlands area, which is considered an asset? And I think MWI thought of the same. Thought it's an
Good evening.
asset.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Scott Brejcha, Brejcha. I am a wetland specialist with V3 Companies. To answer your question, there has been correspondence with the Corps via telephone. We have a little bit of a push and pull here. While access could be allowed, it would defeat the approved native vegetation mitigation and buffer plan that was approved by the Corps of Engineers. So there's a lot of detail and permitting timeframe and design that went into the 40 acres of wetland mitigation that is occurring on site. And there are restrictive covenants, and one of those being when the third-party conservation foundation takes over that area for the long-term management of the native vegetation, which includes the buffer zone as well as the wetland. Dealing with such obstacles as benches or any type of structure from a controlled burn process would be difficult. I do know that the team, from a lunch viewing perspective of users at the park, would be able to enjoy that amenity. But in speaking also with the Conservation Foundation, the general invitation to the public to come and go and access those native vegetation areas was not a hard no, but it wasn't something that was being recommended.
Okay. Is it still being negotiated with the Army Corps of Engineers?
The Army Corps of Engineers at this point is open to conversations. However, being that the project was permitted under a regional permit with the Corps of Engineers Chicago District, it is no longer a permit that they offer. So the development was one of the last regional permits issued in the Chicago District. So amending that permit isn't possible. We would have to enter into an entire new nationwide permit process with the Corps of Engineers.
Okay, and what does that mean?
It just means time and information documentation. But at this point, I don't want to speak too far on behalf of the third-party Conservation Foundation, who ultimately will be in charge of managing that land, and what their means and methods in order to do so to that vegetation. I don't want to put forth any type of obstacle in any agreements that they may have already in place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm looking at it, the east side keeps seeing industrial structures sprouting and very little open space or wild areas. So to me, this would be an asset that I think if we could somehow give public access to, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I know that one of the other discussion points that was a question was if public access were considered, that could have an implication on design parking as well as additional design requirements that I am not a civil engineer, but I understand there would be a snowballing effect potentially of other requirements that would be needed.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on, there was concern expressed by the commissioners that all the buildings could end up being 60 feet tall. And I think there was pushback from the MWI people that no, all the buildings won't be, perhaps just some. So I guess given that, could we remove the variances that are applicable to the whole project and just say on a building by building basis, they would be approved at that time? Would that make sense? Or does it make sense to approve all buildings being 60 feet tall at this one time? Because I think there is going to be a PZC piece to this, as the external elements of the how a building is clad, et cetera, will come before the PZC. Why wouldn't the variances come before them? Why do we need to approve it all in advance?
As I recall, the PZC meeting, that question was asked, debated considerably. It was agreed that providing that certainty up to the maximum of 60 feet allowed greater flexibility in the marketplace as well. I do not know whether there were ex parte conversations about what you referenced. I don't know what the impact on the development would be. I'm happy to turn the podium over to anybody from the development team if they'd like to address it.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Justin Fears. I'm one of the founding principals of MWI Property Group, formerly Midwest Industrial Funds, as part of our rebranding. So it's a great question. We've been doing this for 25 years. We've bought or acquired or developed 100 buildings. We've never bought or acquired one building that has over a 40-foot clear. When you start getting above 40-foot clear to 50 to 60-foot clear, it really means it's a specialty building. Generally, it's a type of food building, typically. And while these buildings have become a bit more prevalent, it's still very much the minority, not the majority of the situations that's there. But when we're undertaking an industrial park and development of this size, and a lot of what we worked very closely with city staff is just having the flexibility to make this a successful private-public partnership. And to do that, we have to consider if it's a 1 in 10, if it's a 1 in 100, we don't want to be locked out from having the potential to do that. So as the mayor stated, yes, it states that we can do up to that. I'd be shocked if there's multiple buildings that ends up happening. Could be one building, but at the end of the day, we need all the flexibility that we can get to make this a successful project. But all I can do is speak from experience that 100 buildings acquired or developed, never done one over 40-foot clear. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if 5-10 years from now we stand before you and there's not one building over 40 feet.
Okay, that's a vague assurance, though. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the flexibility. I guess I look at this that we have multiple variances happening. One is height, another is setbacks, and they kind of all go together for a particular building. I would prefer to see them on a building-by-building basis, which gives a little more control to us, because what you're saying is if flexibility requires it, all 8 or 12 buildings could be 60 feet tall if you need them to be under the current agreement. So I was just posing, could we do that and make it on a case-by-case basis? I think that gives a little more control. You could reduce the setbacks from parking or from the street if you're going higher. So that's important to me. I think that would be something that I would have preferred to see.
Part of why we can't do that on a building-by-building basis is because the speed to market that's required to land these sort of build-to-suit opportunities and these sort of transactions. You don't have 6 months of time many times to go in front of a full multiple meeting and public process on a building-by-building basis. So that's part of the flexibility we wrote in, even if we may never need it, the flexibility that we wrote in and negotiated in with the team to be able to do that, because the speed to market is just critical to make a project like this successful.
Okay. I understand that. The commissioners also had a problem with screening of outdoor storage and allowing a cyclone fence with little slats in between, which I don't believe we allow, and we said we would allow. And in this case, again, the MWI people said that this is going to be a Class A development, and if there is any, it would be insignificant. I guess my thought there is, if that is the case, then why not just do it right and make it good screening? Why do you need to go cheap with the cyclone fence if it's insignificant and you don't think there's going to be much of it? So I would like to remove that variance and just say that it ought to be according to code. I would like to make an amendment to change the variances for that change and remove the allowance for cyclone fencing with slats for outdoor screening.
I'll second that.
There's a motion to amend item 10D, which is to remove the allowance/variance for cyclone fencing for outside storage as stipulated within the agreement, of the PUD agreement, seconded by Alderperson Kilberg. Now we're going to discuss only that matter. That matter only is on the floor. Cyclone fencing. Alderperson Bowring.
I did watch this meeting about a week ago, so it's possible that my recollection is faulty, but as I recall, this was going to be generally an area contained within the site, where such fencing was even contemplated. The developer stated that it was in their best interest to make sure that the site stayed very presentable for its end users. So this is not something I have an issue with. I will confess I don't recall exactly the case in which they said that they contemplated its use, but I would like to retain as much flexibility for the developer as possible. It did not seem like this was going to be something that would be public-facing, but rather something used for some type of containment, possibly. So I don't have a problem with it.
Alderperson Mayor.
I think that from an upkeep standpoint, cyclone fencing with slats upholds better to wind than almost any other fence, and this isn't going to be a space for public amenity as far as I'm concerned. This is a business park. I don't know anybody who goes and hangs out at business parks and finds them attractive, but hopefully for the people that work there, they would be front-facing and not looking at fencing, so I really don't have any problem with this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion by Alderperson Swanson, a second by Alderperson Kilberg, to eliminate the variance that allows for cyclone fencing as stipulated within the language of the PUD.
I have a question.
Alderperson Maladra?
Sorry.
That's right.
This is for David. Do we have code that enables us to act in the case of decrepit cyclone fencing?
We don't have one that specifically prohibits cyclone fencing.
No, but if that fencing is falling apart, if that fencing is not well maintained, if that fencing is.
Property maintenance code.
We have.
Right, correct.
That situation would be covered by our property maintenance code. Okay, thanks.
Motion on the floor, second offered by Alderperson Kilberg, simple majority. This is, again, on the amendment only, removing the variance to allow for cyclone fencing as stipulated in the planned unit development. City Clerk, take the roll. And an aye is to support the motion, a nay is to oppose the motion.
All right, Swanson,
Aye.
Bowering,
Nay.
Bruno,
Nay.
Ruby,
Aye.
Kilberg, Kasserag,
Nay.
Maladra,
Nay.
Marks,
Nay.
Mayor,
Nay.
Paschke.
Nay.
The amendment fails, 3 affirmative votes, 7 nay votes. We're back to the main motion on item 10D. Alderperson Swanson still has the floor.
That concludes my questions. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? Alderperson Ruby.
Thank you. I'd like to kind of piggyback on what Alderman Swanson was saying and asking everyone here to consider the numerous global zoning code deviations requested. Some of these code deviations could have high-level implications to the overall external site appearance and could be grandfathered for the lifetime of the project build-out, which could be decades. Of major concern are the setback and building height requirements and signage. Why would we not require this development to adhere to the same development standards from Title 11 zoning ordinance like everyone else? The applicant says they are providing Geneva with a beautiful wetland mitigation area, but then they say it's taking away from the acreage they can build on. Are they requesting a quid pro quo, zoning code deviations for a wetland area? The problem is the existing wetland area will not be made accessible to the public. So they're asking for something without giving the city or its residents anything in return. If we approve the code deviations, we could have block-long buildings, 60 feet high, without counting mechanical equipment on the roof. Is that correct, David?
That is incorrect.
That is-
It's 60 feet
Okay, so
maximum,
60
which
feet
hides
high. Okay, built 20 feet away from the main road right-of-way, which is less than residential homes. If council wants to approve this overall concept plan, we need to discuss amending this to require the developer to submit each final individual building design for review at a future planning and zoning meeting, and then again to council for approval. In other words, MIF should have to ask for any zoning code deviations at the time they are ready to build. Deviations can be warranted, but it should not be a global ruling set in place beforehand without knowing what the final designs are To provide any developer with all these zoning code deviations ahead of time is not fair to past and future residential, commercial, and industrial applicants. Only if green space is adequately and proportionally provided will this development meet the visual integrity and character of Geneva. They should comply with the zoning codes. They were put in place for a reason. The property is the main eastern gateway to Geneva and should reflect the carefully thought-out zoning plans of our community, not anything goes. Exceptions can be made on a case-by-case basis, but carte blanche on a 211-acre property with a dozen or more buildings is not good governance on our part. I propose an amendment requiring the developer to follow existing zoning codes. If desired, it can say they are invited to request zoning deviations for any individual building if and when they have specific plans, so our planning and zoning commissioners and city council can make informed decisions on actual plans. So I would like to propose the amendment requiring this developer to follow our existing zoning codes.
Before there's a second, the developer, as proposed in the PUD, is indeed following our existing zoning plans. And the PUD, as structured, allows for such variances to be considered through the PZC and at the council.
Okay.
To assert that somehow this developer is not following our codes and our rules, I think is unfair.
Then it's the PUD that I would like to amend to have, to not have all the deviations honored.
By chance, Alderperson Ruby, is this consistent with the correspondence I had earlier today regarding if we provide the certainty for a future build-out, why doesn't every building come back before the PZC and council? And therefore, it's granted, the authority originally is granted to the Community Development Department, should it be substantially conforming? You want to do away with the substantially conforming language in essence, or?
I just don't want them to have carte blanche on this entire space. And they have the potential, we've just been told it's unlikely, but they have the potential to build all 60-foot tall buildings.
I'm struggling with understanding the motion to amend. Forgive me, I'm struggling with the.
Please do so.
I think what she's doing is she's making a motion to amend so that we do what Swanson suggested, and instead of offering blanket variances, including the 60-foot high and the setbacks, that we go building by building as they're ready to build. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Well, in essence, it's a no vote to the PUD as proposed, correct?
That's what it really is.
Okay, yeah, so it's a wholesale exorcism of what's been negotiated through Planning and Zoning Commission in months and months. Okay. Alderperson Bowering?
Sorry, I understand that Ruby will have the floor after this. My apologies. I just wanted to clarify. A PUD is in essence trying to come to an agreement with some negotiation on both sides about something that will be amenable to all sides in lieu of coming before planning and zoning with each and every case so that the developer has some certainty about moving forward. Is that correct? So that's what a PUD is it's asking for a lot of variances altogether. So I guess a point of order perhaps, like does it make sense to amend the PUD, or is this simply an argument against voting in favor of the PUD, in which case an amendment seems not necessary to me, but I'm not sure, so I'm asking the attorney.
The attorney has said to me that it is in essence a request to vote no on the PUD. Now, with that said, if you wish to make a motion, as you have so done, to eliminate that language that allows for, I think your phrase was global variances, what have you. It's a no vote on the PUD, but you can offer that motion if you'd like. If there's a second, then we'll consider it. Otherwise.
So in a sense, it's just.
Same as voting no.
Yeah, it's just a no vote. I was just wanting to make it building by building, so I'm good with just a no vote on the PUD in that case. Thank you.
From the dais, anyone else? Alderperson Kilberg.
Clarification. We just had a vote on a variance as it relates to the fencing.
Correct.
So what's your,
On one issue.
Right.
Not on every issue
But I-
globally.
yeah, but I-
Because
no,
every
no,
issue
no. I
globally-
think what she's pointing out are two variances, height and setback.
That wasn't her motion.
Okay, well, I thought that was the.
Yeah, those were the two key points, in signage.
And I offered the
And
alderperson.
signage,
yeah,
excuse
signage,
me.
yeah, so-
So technically, if she wanted to offer a motion.
And I
to
offered
strike-
that, I
to
offered
strike
that to the good
those
alder.
3 points.
I offered that to the good alderperson.
Okay.
She chose, yes.
So, yeah.
She could add 10 if the alderperson wishes, absolutely.
Just so we're consistent.
Oh, very, very consistent, yeah.
That's fine. Sorry, this is weird.
It's all good.
All right, so Dean, do you want to
No, I'm just.
offer?
You withdrawn the motion, you'd have to
Okay.
offer another motion to amend. You don't have the floor, Kilberg does. When Kilberg retires the floor, and I would encourage all of you to say, but, yeah. If you can possibly enumerate, that'd be great.
Okay.
Otherwise, we are, in my humble opinion, excoriating what has been done over the last multiple months with regard to a planned unit development. And as all of you know, we have other planned unit development language coming before us and has come before us where we have granted that sort of flexibility and certainty for attracting what we all desire. And we have granted faith in our professional staff to ensure that such variances meet the substantial conformity. My humble opinion, if we do so now and say eliminate whatever it is you want to eliminate, then in essence it's starting over, otherwise a vote no on the PUD, so.
Okay, well, our votes have been pretty consistent tonight, so I don't expect any surprises, but I will put out a motion to retract the setback and building height requirements from the PUD.
Seconded.
And that's on all 211 acres.
Yes.
That's setbacks on all physical and/or, dare I say, environmental setbacks. That would be the setbacks from the bike trail, that's a public benefit, all that. Any setbacks that have been requested in any element of the PUD has to be retracted for both setbacks and height,
For the buildings,
just for the structures.
yes,
Okay.
for the structures.
Got it. Okay. Seconded by Kilberg. On the amendment, on the motion, excuse me, to amend, Alderperson Bowring.
I guess as with my comments about the earlier amendment offered, I take seriously the efforts put forward by the developer and city staff to figure out ways to make the site both meet with necessary guidelines from the Army Corps of Engineers, meet with the needs in order to make it a marketable, worthwhile investment on the part of the developer. So I believe that some language offered was a quid pro quo. I think I wouldn't see the commingling of the wetland conservation and the reduced setbacks as quite a quid pro quo, but taking into account the fact that there is going to be a 28-acre decrease for something that I think is of really excellent value. I think that that does, to me, mean that there may need to be some allowances made, and that's the reason we have variances in general and why in a PUD you're able to look at them, as Alderperson Ruby said, a bit more globally to make sure that there's a clear understanding going forward of how development might proceed. So I would not support this motion. I would like to retain flexibility for the developer. Thank you.
Alderperson Bruno, then Alderperson Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor. In my tenure, going into 3 terms, I've never seen a PUD not have this type of language. To my mind, it wouldn't achieve what we're trying to achieve as a PUD, and I think would send a terrible message to developers that we've been trying to draw in. I wouldn't be able to support the amendment. Thanks.
Alderperson Patchke.
Kind of along the same lines, I guess I've heard a lot of discussion about potential for, or lack of potential for success of the development, so I don't understand why there would be a motion that would fly in the face of what the developer just told us about the success of the development. If the developers told us that these are things they need for a successful development, why would we motion against that if we're worried about the success of the development? So I can't support the amendment.
We have a motion by Ruby, a second by Kilberg. This is to amend the PUD to remove all language relative to setbacks and height for all physical structures, AKA buildings. Simple majority is required. If you vote aye, you support the motion. If you vote nay, you oppose the motion. City Clerk.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Nay.
Maladra?
Nay.
Marks?
Nay.
Mayor?
Nay.
Paschke?
Nay.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bowering?
Nay.
Bruno?
Nay.
With 3 in the affirmative, 7 in the negative, the motion to amend fails. We're back to the main motion. This again is item 10D, Alderperson Bowring.
Now that we're back at the main motion, I just wanted to say my perspective on the wetland is that I do not feel that it is a priority to make it accessible to humans. I've heard many statements before the council opining about the natural state of some of this land. I think this is a real opportunity to do actual conservation work, and actual conservation work sometimes directly or indirectly, or sometimes directly benefits humans by getting to go and experience it, and oftentimes it does not. So I, for one, am fine with this being a passive, I believe it's called passive recreation area, meaning that it is not, its primary purpose is not to make it accessible to humans. I would point out there are beautiful areas accessible to people not very far down the road at Fermilab. There's multiple other forest preserves and natural areas up and down the Fox River. I think that the bike path is a wonderful amenity. So I, for one, would not like to jeopardize the agreement that is already in place by trying to make this natural area not actually about the plants and the native animals and the native insects, but instead about something that will directly benefit people who can go and visit it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on item 10D? This is the main motion. Alderperson Mayor, then Alderperson Kilberg, I believe, had his hand up. Alderperson Mayor?
This is the time when I can talk about the EV charging, right? So.
I'm sorry, what? Yes, you can. Now, EV Ready, as you know, is a state policy adopted by the state legislature that requires all developments to be EV ready effective January 1 of 2024.
But
So
for
they are
one vehicle per building, is that the statute?
Well, it's an
or
electrical
is it-
issue. I don't know if the developer wants to talk about it, but it's fairly straightforward language in the Illinois statute. Do you guys want to address this? Or David, you're our EV guy. You help lead the city into EV readiness.
The state statute requires that for new multifamily developments and for new single-family developments.
Right.
It does not apply to commercial or industrial properties. So this goes kind of beyond that to make sure there's at least one EV-ready parking space at each one of the buildings.
Okay, I guess I'm hoping that there can be more EV charging in this location with the substation that we're putting in and the power being readily available in the area. So I'd really like to,
I think demand would drive that. No pun intended.
well, yeah, so,
Depending on the
but, so our electrical substation location only has room for the electrical substation, correct? That's what's being dedicated?
The 1 acre parcel for the substation? Right,
Is it 1 acre?
Yes.
right.
So we have some extra space if we wanted.
So,
It'd be nice to be able to put in EV charging stations at our public location. That's,
And I will announce proudly that Mr. DeGroot led the city of Geneva's efforts to become an EV-ready community, as you well know. The biggest challenge, of course, is where.
Yeah.
Every time we consider a spot, for example, in our bucolic downtown from East Side Drive to Anderson Boulevard, the first response is, well, don't take away a regular spot. So we have that fun, too.
So these wouldn't be regular spots, they'd be
No.
by an electrical substation, so it'd be a great spot for it.
Very attractive.
And very, yes, very
Yes.
EV ready. Anyway, I don't know if there's any way to amend the PUD to incorporate additional language to that extent, but
That would require city costs to provide public EV charging stations on city-owned property where the substation is built. That would not affect the developer per se, that would be our responsibility.
so really all we're getting is one required EV space per until market demand increases and they want to offer more to their tenants.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I have, David. Just make sure here. I just want to address the general idea that this is the last parcel in Geneva available for development. I mean, that it's kind of nuts because there's a lot of parcels in Geneva that are underutilized that could very easily be repurposed. There are empty lots around Geneva, so I felt like it was a dangler in the PZC meeting, and I just don't feel like this is our last bastion. This is a very similar to the properties to the east of it parcel, and I think it's perfectly suited for an industrial park. And I hope that there's manufacturing, just as people expressed during PZC, and I'm sure there will be. We have General Mills, we have Pillsbury nearby, we have FONA, we have the food depository. We act like these buildings are absolutely going to be a plague on our city, yet we have all these users that are really, really good contributors to our city. And I think that it does them disjustice to treat industrial like it's a white elephant. It's going to be considerably more useful than farmland that was underutilized for many years. So I'm supportive of the PUD. I hope you guys find ways to do better than LEED and have more EV charging. Thank you.
You had to get that in, didn't you? Alderperson Kilburg.
I'm going to just take a moment. I received a letter from Phil Page, who was served as city administrator here in Geneva during the construction.
Yes. Point of privilege?
No, I just want to get on your.
Oh, forgive me, I'm sorry. Yes, hi. That's by design. Sorry, Alderperson Kilburg, all yours, sir.
Okay, as I was saying, we all received communication from Phil Page in regard to the land under development here that we're talking about this evening. And I wanted to read especially one paragraph from his letter as it relates to the PUD, and that would be to the issue of traffic. And his comment was that the development will result in significantly more truck traffic in the Kirk and Route 38 area. It was noted at the Plan Commission that the traffic study is not current as it was conducted in 2018. Even with the extension of Couts Road, it still projected a 20% increase in traffic on Route 38 west of Couts, 24 draft revision table, page 101. Since 2018, the DuPage Business Center has significantly built out with a high concentration of distribution warehouse uses, including a large Amazon facility. Truck traffic has certainly increased, and the study needs to be brought current, particularly relating to the Kirk 38 intersection. So I guess that my question is that where are we at with a current traffic study as it relates to the development in question this evening? And with that, I would like to have Mr. Page's letter added to the record without objection.
Mr. Page's letter is part of the record originally, and I believe it's also contained within our original correspondence, but I have no objection if nobody else does.
And could David address the traffic
David,
study
Mr.
piece?
Groot, sir, or Kathleen Timoshenko, or our friends from the development team? I think they're all nudging each other. It's like,
The traffic study was initiated by the city for the construction of Couts Road South to Fabian Parkway to serve this development. It has been in conjunction with review by IDOT, KDOT, the city of Batavia. So there's not a newer traffic study, but it has been a project underway for several years with review by all those agencies.
And when were those approvals granted then in the process? Were they recently or were they early in the process?
I don't know when the last approval we've had was, but we've had constant correspondence within the last year. We've still been receiving review comments.
Obviously, the landscape surrounding this development has changed pretty dramatically over the last 6 or 7 years. And it would seem that a more current traffic study for our own peace of mind, and especially those that reside on the east side of Geneva and that are going to be impacted a great deal by truck traffic on Kirk and adjacent highways that are going to serve this development. Granted, I think most of the development that's taken place in the DuPage Park has really hit stride within the last 6 years. And not to have a good handle on what the impact of their traffic in conjunction with the traffic that we're going to generate, I think would be remiss on our part. So with that, I would request that a more current traffic study than the 2018 study be executed by the city so that we have a good anticipation, a good projection of what we're going to be dealing with over the next decade.
go for it, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's a separate request. It's not really an amendment of this
Okay, that's fine.
item, but I think that's something under new business you could certainly bring up and push for consensus on.
I'm fine with that, thank you.
Alderperson
That's all.
Maladra. Oh, excuse me, sir.
That's all I have at this time.
And forgive me, I want to ask everybody, I know it's late in the game to do so, but when you are finished speaking, if you just want to announce you're finished speaking, I sometimes have difficulty seeing, so forgive me. So, yeah, I know, that was upsetting, by the way. I thought you were a car dealership for a second. Alderperson Maladra.
Okay. Heard a number of things that I'd like to address, and I guess I'll start with the latest, the traffic study. I actually had similar thoughts after I heard the question at a PCC meeting. So I took a look at this traffic study, and I took a look at the traffic study done by Batavia for the big development they did on Kirk and 38. And I believe that the traffic study done here reflects the building in terms of square feet and that went up in Batavia, and it reflects the traffic associated with that, and the two plans are consistent with each other. So that being the most recent building developed, I don't know how much more recent we can get in terms of traffic volumes as estimated by the standards applied to traffic studies. Other things that I heard, the concept of this as a gateway to the city of Geneva. It's an interesting idea, but I look at it differently. I look at it as an entire area. That area is seen by St. Charles, Batavia, and West Chicago as industrial land use. St. Charles has adjacent properties, or the nearest properties to it that St. Charles has are zoned M2. Batavia has the zoning called airport, which has all kinds of uses in it. Batavia obviously Also has its own for industrial use. So this is an industrial area. I believe that the gateway to the city of Geneva occurs farther west than the SEMP. And that's the way that I've seen it, and I believe we've seen it all along. In general, since you made general comments, I'm going to make general comments. It's all your fault.
My permission.
Yeah. In general, this is consistent with the plans that we've had, as Alderman Ruby pointed out, for over 20 years. But those plans aren't static. We've updated those plans fairly regularly throughout the 20 years. And with each update, we envision this area as being light industrial. We do that, at least to my understanding, as I was taught by Mr. Phil Page. We do that because a diversified tax base is critical to the success of the city. This is due to a couple of factors, one being that different zoning classifications have different demands on public services, residential being the highest, light industrial being the lowest. But we also do that because over-reliance on residential property taxes over time places an unsustainable tax burden on homeowners. I keep hearing that we're being evil because we're just out to look for tax revenue. Any tax revenue we get is used to offset what people are going to pay in their property taxes. It's not going into my pocket. It's not going into anybody's pocket. It's for the residents of the city of Geneva. So it's integral to our strategic planning that this area be light industrial. That's buttressed by the fact that it's also integral to the strategic planning of St. Charles, Batavia, and West Chicago. So this isn't just Geneva, coming up with some crazy civic planning that suits its needs or purposes. This is sort of standard practice in community development, and an area that has an airport and rail yard access and already has light industry there and has had for decades, is a great place to put it. Warehousing, it troubles me. I brought it up 2 years ago in a strategic planning meeting and didn't get a whole lot of support for taking a closer look at the proper zoning for that, but I think that's because none of us really understood it. And at this point, I'm thinking it doesn't, all that matters as far as what we understand about warehousing is that it's here. Whatever we do with this property, warehousing is here. It's in Batavia, it's in West Chicago, it's in St. Charles, so the traffic is here. The fact that the traffic is here is why we've already invested in improvements to Couch Road north of Route 38. And the fact that that traffic is here is why it's critically important to us to see that Couch Road is extended south of Route 38, so that that traffic has a path to get to I-88 that's not Kirk Road. That traffic, whether it's generated in St. Charles or West Chicago, is coming west, but it's turning short of Kirk Road. This development, this annexation agreement, this PUD gets us Couch Road extended. It gets us the light industry that our strategic plans have called for the decades that I've been involved, and as Kathleen pointed out, for decades before that, even before I was born, which was a long, long time. So to my mind, the flexibility that we're offering in this PUD in order to gain a successful development is good, not just for the property owner, it's good for the entire community in multiple ways that have, some of which have very little to do specifically with that property itself and more to do with the regional impact of the changing economy. Okay, I take my hand down, I'm done.
Before I recognize Alderperson Mayor for a second time on this matter, is there someone else who wishes to speak who has not yet spoken on item 10D? Alderperson Kasserag.
I'd like to push a little bit more on the public access to the wetlands on this. I guess, sir, if you wouldn't mind, I think you're the one that, or whoever was talking about the permit. With, so maybe if you could please, sir, just explain to me a little bit more about when we applied for the permit and what this new national permit thing is.
Sure, no problem. I have a history with this property that predates this development. Delineations began, which is the identification of wetlands on a property, in 2018 through various, the owner, a private equity firm, etc. At the time, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the federal regulatory authority for wetland permitting over wetlands and waters that they have jurisdiction over. At the time, there was a process called the jurisdictional determination where the wetland report is submitted, the Corps of Engineers comes back with an answer and designates which wetlands they are taking jurisdiction of, which wetlands they are not. Those wetlands that they are not taking jurisdiction of default to the local county ordinance, Kane County in this matter. In 2020 is when we received the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers regional permit. The regional permit was a regional permit program offered from the Chicago district for about 12 years, until they recently got rid of it in late 2022, early 2023. And the regional permit, same stipulations, but allowed for acreages and different types of development. And it's valid for a period of 3 years. So we received that permit in 2020 with the expiration in 2023. And the reason that the regional permit program was dissolved at the Corps of Engineers Chicago District is because the rest of the nation did not use regional permits. It was a access pathway that the Chicago District kind of took on their own. So to come into conformance with the rest of the nation and other U.S. Army Corps of Engineers districts, they now follow the nationwide permit program, which again has different stipulations, has different requirements. So we were able to obtain our permit, and once you obtain your permit, you're able to move forward with those said impacts, which were only limited to the northern portion of the large wetland complex. As long as those were done in accordance with the plan from a grading perspective within the 3-year period, then you are in conformance with that permit.
okay, so then, just part of what you said, so the permit expired in 2023? I didn't understand that one part.
Yes.
Or just the permit program?
Well, the program actually ended prior to our permit being, fully, we have documentation and the letter from them that we are valid for 3-year period. So as long as we moved forward and did what was permitted within that 3-year period, we're in conformance. But you cannot go back and amend that permit currently.
Understood.
Without going through a whole new review and basically starting over.
Not like the nitty-gritty, but give me an idea of what a whole new review means.
Oh, it's very complex. It took over 1.5 years to get our first Corps of Engineers permit.
And that was in 2020?
The mitigation detail for the on-site mitigation alone was a strenuous process because you may or may not know that the days of doing on-site mitigation are long gone. Developers found it easier to go to a mitigation bank wipe their hands clean and write a check. You know, so here we have a really awesome opportunity from not only the conservation aspect. I mean, this is going to be a very green business park. Flora and fauna are on the, I would say, not the best shaped side, but the plan that is in effect, that is required by the permit, will have this area flourishing with a diverse amount of native species, attracting pollinators, attracting other wildlife. The buffers as well will be prairie vegetation, which is a standard in many communities, just from a stormwater BMP perspective. So I know you're basically trying to get to the public access point of this. And really, you know, I think we need to question on, do we want the public to be accessing this area? You know, from a litter perspective, or what is the liability and who takes on that liability of maintenance and or, God forbid, an emergency or something. I agree that this is a business park and not a forest preserve district or a conservation area along the river. It will be ecologically beneficial to the development and to the city. But if you were to ask my personal opinion about public access, I don't think it's the right fit for that.
I mean, I guess I respectfully disagree. I mean, everything you just said is incredible, right? The green business park, the pollinators, the flora, the fauna, everything. Why not let, especially the East Siders that are living close to this, enjoy some of that and experience some of that? And it seems to me to be, I guess now I'm talking more to the council than you directly, a nice small compromise with a group of people that, you know, oppose this outright.
There are other factors in play, obviously, being a wetland specialist and guy, from a developer, you know, I'm sure there's security risks and end users may have specific security. And then there's the policing of the dusk till dawn. And, you know, what about damage to the native vegetation, right? Somebody drives their car into it or flicks a cigarette and it burns up, you know, so then we're talking, is it the Conservation Foundation, third party? Is it the owner? Who's responsible for that public aspect of things, right?
Does the Conservation Foundation allow public access to their managed lands in other situations?
I don't know that answer. Dan Lobus is not here this evening. He was here for the last meeting. I wouldn't want to comment on their projects.
I guess I'm wondering, I totally understand what you're saying. Obviously, I have feelings other ways. If it might not be possible just to ask staff to work with them on whether this is a viable idea in the future. I don't know, I could offer that as an amendment. I'm not asking to require that there be public access.
No need for amendment. I know that this gentleman who just spoke indicated that conversations continue with ACOE. I would argue that the Conservation Foundation, who will be managing this site, has ultimate authority and final say. I would be remiss if this council or this community demanded that someone who manages public property for public benefit allow or is told how to do as such, for the reasons you cited. But I know that conversations are continuing, and of course, you'll report back to Mr. DeGroot and others as to how those conversations continue, so.
I would then just respectfully ask that report somehow come back to the council at the appropriate time, so that we get
Provide
some
updates, of
closure,
course.
so that we get some closure on it. Again, I mean, I agree with the arguments that you're saying. I'm not thinking you're wrong or anything. I just think it's something that the public is asking for. There's a lot of people. And you know, it just seems like a good idea.
And I know our attorneys and team are in contact with Conservation Foundation attorneys, so I'm sure that we'll be able to work all that discussion out.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
Alderperson Ruby for a second time, unless someone else has not yet spoken on this item.
Mayor first.
Oh, Alderperson Mayor, forgive me. And then Ruby. Pardon me?
I will let
Alderperson Ruby.
Thank you. I just have kind of a general comment. The three of us in opposition tonight, it's not a surprise, we are the three who live east of the river. And our constituents are the ones who are being affected by this plan. They are adamantly opposed, and we are doing our best to fight for them, but we are clearly outnumbered. One thing that I would like to ask, and this, no one has to answer this, but it would be awesome if you did. Two big questions from the constituents that have not been able to be answered. We have not had the opportunity to have these questions answered. One is, why did your company not respond to any of the inquiries from?
That is not relevant to the discussion.
I just wanted to give them the opportunity to
And
respond.
they will not be answering that question because you're accusing them of being,
I'm asking them why they didn't respond to anybody, any of our residents or the media, why they did not respond. And my second question is,
it's not relevant to item 10D, respectfully speaking.
so-
I would never allow you to attack a residential home builder who said, why didn't you take my call? 'Cause I wanted you to build a cheaper house.
Well, it was literally
I would never allow you to
thousands
say to
of
anybody, a commercial,
inquiries.
why don't you offer your product for 20% less? I can't afford that. That's not right, Alderperson Ruby.
well, I apologize, it's not right to ignore thousands of
I can hear you,
people.
Mrs. Marr.
So I think that speaks volumes of your character.
That is absolutely out of line.
I apologize.
We have tried our damnedest to make certain that we have a balanced perspective. People can disagree with MIF, MWI, whatever you want to call them. People can disagree with each other respectfully. But I also know for a fact, that there's members of this community who trolled professional staff at this developer, who followed them in cars,
I
who
disagree.
called,
I know
disagree?
nothing about that.
I didn't say you know nothing.
Okay,
I'm saying I do.
I don't believe
It becomes
that.
ridiculous, and it speaks volumes about our community.
I
Vote
don't believe
no.
that.
Vote no, fine. But to call into question these gentlemen and ladies is equivalent to calling into question every developer's character, and that's not right. I don't think that's right. My responsibility is to facilitate the meeting. A last gasp of, don't we all hate you, son of a bitches, is pathetic.
That is not what I said. I was giving them an
exactly what you said.
opportunity to respond to a question
You
that has
also
been
said you don't
asked.
have to, and I'd be surprised if you do. So,
I don't believe I
Floor
said
is yours.
surprised if you do. Anyway, my other question was the cutting of the trees.
that is not relevant to the PUD.
Well, I'm curious about the Army Corps of Engineers permit.
That is
And
not-
all along, we have not been able to get answers, and now we have somebody here who seems like he might be able to provide some insight on that. I realize it's not part of the agenda, but if you would
Well, it's
like
not
to
relevant.
provide
It's
an
not-
answer.
It's not relevant.
Point
I'm
of order.
doing this for the public.
Point of order.
It's
Bringing
fine.
up,
Okay.
bringing up questions that are relevant to events that took place
Okay.
prior to the request for annexation seems to me to be a violation of due process. Could the attorney please give some clarity about that? Thank
I've
you.
stated
That's
clearly,
fine.
it's not
I'm-
relevant, it's not relevant.
I'm
This
done.
isn't- This is an
I'm
attempt,
just-
respectfully speaking, to re-adjudicate, Mrs. Marr and others who will continue to whisper in the back row, issues that you have not felt satisfied about. We have tried our darndest to provide as cogent, complete, and coherent questions. I understand there's anger regarding what may have transpired, but that's not our decision tonight. Period.
My apologies. It's been months of frustration, and I'm trying to stand up for my residents, and I thank all of you for your passion. Thank you.
And let me state this as well, respectfully to Alderperson Ruby and anyone else who feels that this is, quote, just an East Side issue. I hate that statement. I hate that intentional division in our community. This is a Geneva issue. If you don't support it, vote no. That's fine. We're all grown adults. We can get along with it. But to assume that this is strictly impactful, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, to only those who live east of the Fox is a bold-faced lie. All of you know, I have a brother-in-law who lives close by the development, just as close as Alderperson Ruby does. And I have friends, and we all have friends who have called and said certain things, and that's fine. Was Delnor just an impact on the West Side residents? Is Burgess Norton just an impact on the West Side residents? Randall Road, what a cluster. It ruined all the West Side residents. We're one community. We're one community. And I struggle with that us versus them within a 10 square mile radius. I will speak very candidly now. We have an obligation, and I think an opportunity and a responsibility as elected officials to speak candidly with our residents and with our non-residents. But to assume that developments are strictly located in a particular ward or a particular street or a particular neighborhood and only impact those neighborhoods, good, bad, or indifferent, I mean, that's the epitome of the shit we see in D.C., and I don't think that's right. Because when East State Street's redeveloped, folks, at a tune of $24 million, it's not just an east side issue. It's a city issue. When a restaurant closes, it's not just a downtown issue, it's a city issue. When a restaurant opens, it's not just a downtown, it's a city issue. When we celebrated the new fire station, it wasn't just for our friends east of the river, it was for everybody in the community. Mayor. Gilbert.
So I want to echo what the mayor was saying about this east side mentality, that it's us and them. I grew up on the east side. This area is not part of any idea of what I thought were my stomping grounds when I was living on the east side. It was a farm owned by the Bork family. The Bork family did not put their land into a conservancy. It was a private property that was sold to private developers who have the right to build on it what they wish. And if people wanted to protect trees on that property, the appropriate thing to do would be to go to King County and try to establish a preserve and acquire the property. What we're asking for, what we're demanding by saying, oh, I want to be able to go to the wetland, is saying, hey, private property owners, you need to give us something for building into our community. That is a quid pro quo. That is asking for something in exchange for something else. And it happens with PUDs because that's appropriate. But in this case, I pass through this area every day. I observe it. When they said flooding, I know exactly where the area is that floods because I see it all the time. I observe all the wetland development that's been going on, and it's lovely. Do I want to go walk through it? Absolutely not. Nobody wants to walk through wetland. It's get your feet wet. You get cattails everywhere. But you can see that the biodiversity within a wetland is impressive. And there's bugs and there's birds and all sorts of yucky stuff that I don't want to be around. But do I wish there was a public amenity for this? I wish there was more EV charging. That's what I wish. And that it was a public amenity. I think, to echo what Alderperson Maladra was saying about Couts Road, I mean, the number one reason why I am in favor of this development is because of Couts Road and because it diverts traffic away from Kirk and 38, which my whole life has been a hazardous intersection. It was hazardous when Kirk was 2 lanes, it's hazardous now. And why did we not support a gas station there for trucks? Because it's hazardous. We don't want more traffic there, and Couts Road diverts the traffic. It diverts all the traffic from the north towards the expressway. There's not very many people that are going to be traveling north on taking their trucks north. They're going to be going to the expressway. It also relieves traffic on 38 by creating a much faster conduit with less intersections and signals along Couts to Fabian to Kirk Road to the expressway. We don't want warehousing, but I mean, we all order online all the time and don't go to stores anymore, and stores are closing down. So it's here, and this is what we've got, and I don't think that Geneva is going to fall empty when we get into the marketplace with these properties. I think that this developer is going to find good users. Maybe we can swap out some properties in Geneva for out here. That would be amazing. I think that this is about opportunity, not about this horrible thing to happen to Geneva. I think that this is a good thing, and that's why I'm supporting it, not because I don't care about the east side. I most certainly care about the east side. That's why I supported extending the TIF that can fund improving the east side State Street corridor. And ironically, some of the people that are saying that east siders don't get what the west side gets didn't support that. It doesn't make any sense. That's the vehicle that we have to incentivize development, and there's a real disengagement with how to improve the east side, really, versus this idea that it would be housing out there. My friend lived east of Kirk Road for a while, and that's no place to be. That's not a place for residential. It's apart from Geneva, and I wouldn't encourage that in any case. So I think that's about all I have to say. I'm obviously supporting it. I hope there's not that many 60-foot tall buildings, but I'm sure that there won't be because those cost more too. So let's hope for the best, and I think that this could be a great thing for Geneva in 20, 30 years.
Excuse me, Alderperson Kilbert, sir.
No, just a final comment. I just wanted to share that we're not against industrial development, either commercial or industrial. These warehouses will serve a purpose. I guess my concern rests with our current industrial park. And if you drive down Averill and you look at the aesthetics of our industrial park currently, I think it's attractive. And the pace that it was developed at, I think, met the needs of the community. We worked with individual developers that came to the city, provided us with a plan, and they built, and they're still here. The setbacks, the heights of the buildings, the landscaping, everything about our current industrial park is appealing. As I look at our PUD that we're talking about this evening, I don't think when it's all finished it'll resemble what we're accustomed to. And again, maybe I'm wrong, and when it's completed in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, then I'll acknowledge that. But the other thing is to create a panacea that this is going to be a windfall, a tax windfall for the city of Geneva, I think is somewhat of a stretch. Because I think if you look at our current industrial park and the rate of tax increases that they've experienced over the last decade is dramatically different than what you would see with our residential property owners in the city of Geneva. There's a real disparity there. And having prior experience with this, with TIFs, and again, I know I can't use that word, I'll retract that, but when there's a tax appeal, usually it's an industry that's appealing. So I would just hope that these industries that develop in our industrial park, as this 23-year plan plays out, aren't at the Kane County, our Kane County offices appealing their taxes. Because the way that this endeavor works best for the city of Geneva is if they acknowledge the taxes that are assessed, they pay those taxes, then there might be relief for the individual taxpayer. But to create the panacea that property owners, when this is approved, are going to see a dramatic reduction in their property taxes or a stabilizing of their property taxes, I think are a stretch. Because I think those are going to continue to march forward. And the percentages, probably between residential and industrial, they'll change slightly, but not as dramatically as you might think. Thank you.
Alderperson Maladra.
So all of this recent conversation just has me left with one thing. Change is hard. This is not the first time that we've gone through something like this. Change is hard. Rapid change is sometimes frightening. We faced this in the mid-'90s with the development of the Randall Road corridor and the number of new homes being built west of Randall Road. There was fear about the impact of traffic. There was fear about the impact of property values. There was fear about quality of life. There was fear about the impact of all those people going to the Geneva schools. And we stand here today still a strong and vibrant community in spite of those fears. Yes, this may not be the panacea that we envision, but it's not going to be the disaster that some people fear either. The way we get through storms like this is through a planning process. The planning process that we have today was honed, sharpened, and refined during the rapid change of the 90s. And as I said earlier, it was modified and updated fairly regularly. And one of the things that I've heard tonight that bothers me is that some of the people on this council who participated in those updates and refinements are now rejecting the plan and the framework as outdated and obsolete. This is not the best time to bring that up. That does a disservice to everybody else on this council. It does a disservice to new property owners, and it does a disservice to existing property owners. I'm interested to find out that I guess I no longer represent any part of the east side. That bothers me. I also am part of the Fifth Ward. I do represent the east side, and I reject outright that the voices of the three people here tonight represent the entirety of the east side. Sometimes it's hard for us to do what we believe in. You're doing that right now. I'm doing that right now, too. That doesn't mean I'm not thinking of the long-term best interests of my constituents. And I'm insulted that you assume that I am. Quite the contrary, everything I do is in the long-term best interests of my constituents, but also all constituents of Geneva, not just today, but the constituents that were going to be here tomorrow. You want to see the effects of a diversified tax base, I guess I would say let's look at the communities that don't have that diversity. Let's look at communities like Winfield. Let's look at communities like Wayne, where the over-reliance on residential makes it difficult for them to hire police and fire because they can't meet their tax burden. To do nothing is to just invite that trouble. Will this be the panacea that some people think it's going to be? Of course not. Our planning process and our framework is not perfect. Nothing can be perfect. The best we can do, or nothing can be perfect unless we have complete clarity of a crystal ball. Does anybody up here have that? No. So you have no more certainty that this is going to be a disaster than I have certainty that this is going to work out well. But I am certain that planning for Couch Road Extended wasn't done just because we feel like extending a road. It was done because we knew there was traffic coming. I can say that light industry in this area has been part of Geneva's plan since the 50s because the understanding of a diversified tax base is common and prevalent in community planning. To try to insist now that it's not is ridiculous. Warehousing presents a problem. But as I said, in 2021, I brought up looking at the zoning we have for warehousing. There was zero interest with my partners on the council. So now we're sitting here at the 11th hour trying to claim that warehousing is bad. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, we don't know. But what we do know is that e-commerce is here, that the economy has changed, that it's affecting brick and mortar retail, that the demand for speed and delivery is necessitating that products and goods be located near urban centers. So unless we're ready to go back to the way things were, and you have to go to the store to buy things, and we're gonna live the way we did in 1990, this is the new reality. So it's better for us to recognize the reality and attempt to deal with it to the best of our ability, and I would assert that we're not taken by surprise by all of this change. It indeed has been seen coming for decades. Sorry.
Alderperson Swanson.
Thank you. I just wanted to push back on one thing you said, Alderperson Maladra, and that's that no one wanted to look at warehousing. That's not true, and I think we had consensus, and I think we asked for a policy discussion at some point.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, I thought we did.
The meeting was held at the Geneva Public Library as part of our strategic planning process. It was held in November. We had an open discussion at that meeting to discuss whether we should consider amending our light industrial definition to consider whether or not to amend and/or exclude warehousing. And
Dead silence.
Zero.
dead silence.
I recall.
I don't get that
I
pissed
recall
off easily.
requesting a policy discussion, so I
It was
thought-
after the other Amazon fiasco.
Okay. I
Depending
think we
on how you
should.
look at that.
And I would be on board with that. I think that would be a wonderful. You mentioned that we're against industrial. I don't think that's true. I think we're against this particular development as structured, because there is so much warehousing element to it.
But there's not.
But there's not.
But there's not.
Oh, never mind, excuse me, I shouldn't speak. Nor should you. So, Alderperson Swanson has the floor, so excuse me.
Okay. In our eyes, looking at it, and from what we're hearing from the residents, there is. And every building has one entire side devoted to truck docks, which is not what you would call a normal manufacturing building. I think, yes, manufacturing building does have docks and 5 or 10%. Do they typically have an entire side of their building lined with docks? They do not. So that gives pause to residents when they see that and can see what can come in the future. So industrial is not an issue. We're not against industrial, but having 450 truck docks or however many it is and truck trailers is problematic for some. So, thank you.
Alderperson Marks, then Bowering. Oh, forgive me, Patchke, Marks, then Bowering, sorry. And when you're finished, say, I yield the floor, because, again, I can't see the hands going up, so forgive me.
Thank you.
So,
I just had a few things. I wanted to jump back to the EV discussion. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the plan calls for EV ready, not EV installed. Is there an assumption that EV chargers will be installed by the developer? I know there's the state distinguishes between the two. There's EV ready and there's EV installed, and I believe the plans, the PUD calls for EV ready, but not EV installed. Can someone clarify that?
I know it's cost-effective to make it EV-ready now as opposed to, as you well know, recalibrate the entire building.
That's correct. It means there's an outlet in the circuit ready for installation,
Yep.
not that it is installed.
Would it then not make sense, and this is where I was going with it, because that's the more cost-effective option, would it not make more sense to include more spaces that are EV-ready because it's going to cost more to expand that later?
I mean,
I think it's a matter of, well, excuse me.
it probably would be more cost-effective now, but again, it's about demand for it, and we haven't really seen that yet in private industrial
Okay.
areas.
And would the cost then be on the developer to install it if demand grows?
If
On
demand
private
grows and they
land,
want to,
absolutely.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My other comment, and that was all on the EV,
Okay.
thank you. My other comment was on the public access to the wetland. I agree with Alderperson Bowering and Alderperson Mayer. I love spending time in nature. I love hiking. That's most of what we do on our vacations, but I also believe fervently that there are times when critical nature and habitats need to be protected and not available to the public. So I respectfully disagree with my colleagues that are calling for that. And then I think this has been a really good public education moment about the need for a diverse tax base. I appreciate Alderperson Maladra's comments about communities that don't have diverse tax bases, what that results in. And I don't want to see Geneva go down that road. I think this is really important for the development of our community. And I think we've had some good opportunities and maybe some missed opportunities for public education about the importance of having a diverse tax base. So that's all. I'm done.
Thank you. Alderperson Marks. Then
You know-
Bowering, I believe.
It's not what everybody wants. There's been compromises in this, and I appreciate staff and the time that the developers put into this. Looking at all these documents, you can see it is. You know, I don't see this as an east or west side breaking either. I mean, people from the west side drive down Fabian every day to get to 38. Count Roads is going to cut that traffic down. It's going to be better for the whole community. It's not the ideal. You know, no development is ideal for anyone. It never is. There's fear. You know, there's people are scared. I think the wetlands are going to be absolutely fantastic. I agree with the people who say, I don't think public belong in there. I don't think the public should be going into wetlands that are in an industrial park. I think it just causes a whole lot of issues. Where are they going to park? They're going to be parking on private property or blocking the road to go into that. You know, we can't do that. I think what you guys have done has been a great job. I think you've dedicated a lot of land for green space in this development, and I give you a lot of credit for that. I don't know if you were forced to or not, and I don't know that answer, but I think this is going, when it's done, Geneva's going to be proud of this when it's all built out and done. I support it, and I appreciate everybody's time, staff and the developer and the lawyers and everybody who's been involved in it. And I know this has not been the first look that people have had at the property. You know, we heard from the wetland mitigation, he did work for, you know, private funds and other people that were looking at this property. So this is not the first pass that the staff has had to look at this property, what's coming. It's what they have told us is the best they have seen so far. It's an opportunity in front of us, and I hate to lose that opportunity cost because we don't think it's absolute best, because I'm not sure we're going to ever get what's going to make everyone happy. So I support it, and I thank you for coming to Geneva. I really do. Mayor, I'm done.
Alderperson Bowering.
I'll try to keep things brief because I am in part reiterating things that some of my colleagues have mentioned. I represent the First Ward, but I also consider myself as an older person thinking about the long-term interests of the entire city. So I think this classification of east versus west side is divisive and corrosive, and I would prefer that we try not to engage in that. I think it's possible for us to disagree and still maintain respect, and so I would request that from my colleagues. I would also like to point out in the First Ward, we have light industry. We have light industry north of State Street. We have light industry south of State Street. I welcome it. I think it's interesting. There's people coming to my neighborhood to work. It's not just people living there. I'm glad that there's jobs for people. I don't see it as a detriment, so I'm sorry that the perception on the east side or of the constituents that are in communication with many of our alderpersons is so apparently negative about light industry coming in. Heard maybe it's not all against industry, just this particular industry, but when I see these meetings and when I hear from my other counterparts on the council, it sounds fairly universally against light industry, and I think that's a mistake. As other alderpersons have pointed out, the diversification of our tax base is actually essential. The diversification that we have is what carried us through the last recession. We would be in a much more dire strait if we did not have that when we saw property values tank. I think we move incrementally to keep diversifying that tax base. It's not a fell swoop. I guess I wanted to just bring up this question. Probably no one will answer it. When I hear this argument about warehouses, it strikes me as incredibly classist. As other alderpersons have pointed out, we all buy things that come from warehouses, whether they're stored in a warehouse on its way to a brick and mortar store, whether it's stored in a warehouse on its way to a grocery store, which I guess is also brick and mortar, or whether it comes delivery from an internet service. Warehouses are also part of the manufacturing process. So like this division between industry and warehousing, I think that was one of the ways, as I understood it from staff, that the initial discussion broke down. The attempt to exclude warehousing does not make sense because you can't have manufacturing without the ability to also have warehousing. But I guess I would put it out there. Who are we as Geneva that we are so good we should not have warehouses in our community? I reject that idea. Who should have the warehouses then? People that have lower property values than us, people who are black, people who are brown? That's gross. When I hear that, I cannot help but jump to those conclusions because I don't hear anything else to support the argument against warehouses other than trucks. Well, you know what? Kirk Road has 4 lanes. It's going to be expanded soon. There will be trucks. There are already trucks, as my counterparts have pointed out. Why shouldn't we at least get to have some tax revenue as, in part, a compensation for the fact that we are also going to deal with pollution? Yes, I'd love to see less pollution too. Do I think that we get to that by not allowing development that has been in planning or contemplated for such a long period of time? No, I don't think so. I think we get to that through regulation at a much higher level than we are authorized to do at the city. As others have pointed out, this infrastructure expansion is really vital to actually achieving the goal of less traffic on Kirk, which it seems like some folks on the east side would dearly like to see, and I would dearly like to see. My partner works at Fermilab. I do not like to drive on Kirk Road as more than I have to get there because it feels scary and dangerous, and it's going to get bigger. To the extent that we can divert truck traffic from any part of Kirk to another roadway that is better suited to it, I think that is a tremendous win for our community. And I'm sorry that it does not seem that that view is represented on the east side. Although I would also say the people that we wind up seeing coming before city council, it's often a few voices, and they are passionate, and I think it's good that we hear them, but I'm not convinced that they represent the entirety of their wards. I would also like to, as gently as I can, suggest that those alderpersons who are fielding numerous requests for information or statements about misapprehensions have a role in providing some of the information that they have available from staff that the average constituent probably does not. I've only been on this council for a year. In that time, I have met with every department head. I have had tours of all of our facilities. I continue to learn every single time a constituent reaches out to me with a question or a complaint. A lot of the time, I have to say, I don't know the answer. Let me go ask someone. I go and find out information, and I may have to let them down. I may have to say, as I just did today, to someone complaining about sidewalk changes along Route 31, and I know I'm going astray a bit, but I feel like it's part of a bigger point. I had to say, I understand how frustrating it is that we are losing some of these crossings. However, it is not up to the city. The city has done everything that it can to preserve them. It is not our decision. So I'm learning, I'm trying to help them learn as well. I think that is part of the job of an elected official, is not just to receive unfiltered the information or opinions from constituents who simply do not have access to the same volume of material that we do, or the same access to staff potentially. Although in my experience before I was on the council, I found staff quite responsive when I reached out to them just as a regular person. So I absolutely support this proposal. I think it's been long contemplated. I think it will be beneficial. I also don't have a crystal ball, as Alderperson Maladra pointed out. There are many unknowns. I think our staff has done an excellent job trying to make sure that the city's interests are protected, that our community's interests are protected, and that the developers' interests are protected, because that's also part of our community benefit. We are going to welcome them into our community, I hope, and they will be part of our community. And with that, I will end it. Thank you. I am done.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Call the question.
Request to call the question. The question's been called. We're on item 10D. The motion made several days ago was by Bruno, seconded by Paschke. Item 10D, simple majority is required. City Clerk, please take the roll.
And I'm calling the question first.
Oh, forgive me, I'm calling the question first. Forgive me. Roll call vote on the call to question.
Okay. Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bauer?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilburg? Kasserad?
Nay.
Maladra?
7-3. The question's been called on the motion by Bruno, seconded by Paschke. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
Bowering?
Aye.
Motion's approved with 7 affirmative votes and 3 nay votes. Item 10D has been approved by this council. We jump to item 10E, approval of Resolution 2024-64, granting a preliminary and final plat of subdivision for the MIF Geneva Park. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? So moved. Marks and Bruno, in that order. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
With 7 affirmative votes, 3 nay votes, item 10E has been approved by this council. We jump to item 10F, consider Resolution 2024-62, rejecting bids open June 3rd, 2024 for the 2024-2025 underground electric cable replacement project. Motion by Bowering, seconded by Marks. Ms. Dawkins.
Relatively self-explanatory. We put bids out on June 3rd. We got 2 bids back. Both were higher than the budgeted amount for, so in light of the price received and with only 2 bidders responding, we would like to reject these bids, and then we will rebid it at a later date. And hopefully, we will get a better response, because we did have a couple of bidders say they just didn't have the time to respond this time. So with that, if you have any additional questions, we do have Director Babica who could field those for you.
City Clerk, please take the roll on item 10F.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
With a vote of 10 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 alderpersons absent, item 10F has been approved by this council. Item 10G, consider Resolution 2024-63, authorizing the execution of a third amendment to the parking lot lease with St. Mark's Church through April 30th, 2027.
So moved.
Motion by Marks, seconded by Kasserag.
Okay, so the city is a party to a lease with St. Mark's Church for the use of a parking lot. The lease amount is an amount equivalent to the annual property taxes plus $1,500 and liability insurance. I would note that back in 2022, the city did notify St. Mark's because the law had changed, and said that they may be eligible for a tax exemption because the parking lot is being used for municipal purposes. So they actually did go through the process to get that exemption. So they even, they were refunded money back to when the law changed, and they refunded the city those property taxes. So now technically the lease is only the $1,500. The lease expired in April 30th, but there is one more 3-year extension that's available under the original lease. And so that's what we are asking for this evening, is to extend that lease through April 30th of 2027, at which time the original lease will expire and we would renegotiate any new lease agreement with St. Mark's. And if you have any additional questions, I'm here to answer those for you.
Alderperson Marks.
Just, you're probably going to love this question, Stephanie. Will the lease allow it at the city's expense to put EV charging stations in that parking lot, or not?
The lease doesn't allow for, I mean, that would be a negotiated
Or
item.
we would go back and
I mean,
negotiate with them?
we're responsible for the maintenance of the parking lot,
Okay.
but beyond that, it would just
Okay,
be a negotiated
but I mean, we
item.
can go back and,
We
if
can always ask
we need
them
the spot,
anytime,
we can
yeah.
go back.
And
Okay,
especially
thank
in
you.
3 years, for sure.
That's fine, thank you.
City Clerk, on item 10G, please take the roll.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 alderpersons absent. Item 10G, Resolution 2024-63 has been approved. We're at public comment, folks. This is an opportunity for those of you joining us here in the Berkram Yoga Room to please join us at the podium if you have any comments for the council. What happened? Holy mother, I'm back to my high school weight. It's like, podium's open.
Michael Olison with the Geneva Chamber of Commerce. As you all know, we have the 74th Swedish Days beginning here on Wednesday. I don't want to make this a general commercial about Swedish Days, but I do want to focus on one very important factor. Our non-for-profits, our service organizations, many of them truly depend on the revenue they make during Swedish Days to support their needed activities that they have in the city. So I would simply ask all of you and everybody who does come visit our community to please support those non-for-profit food booths and those service organizations so that they can continue their excellent work. Thank you.
Anyone else? You made it through.
I have one comment. I'm disturbed. I sat here and I listened to all of this. I'm very upset with you.
Do not speak directly to a council member, speak directly to me.
All right. I'm very upset with you then.
Fair enough.
Because you should have called a point of order. She had no right to basically attack the people who voted no and for saying that you know, or to challenge how they were responding to their residents. I felt that was really rude, and you interrupted everybody else.
You're entitled
but
to your
you
opinion.
allowed that.
And welcome to Geneva. Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Dinwiddie, how are you?
We got the new filter since last time.
Well, it's because of you.
Yeah.
That's a Dinwiddie cost right there.
I'll write a check and, you know.
We're going to charge Jeff Schilke that.
Hey, I just have, you know, as everybody, it's hot and it's late. I just have two comments, and I wrote them down. I'll just read them tonight. When the Prairie State Coal Electric Campus closes in 2045, how will the city meet their 20 megawatt guarantee in the agreement? One question. Maladra? Is that, okay. Councilman over there, I agree with him about the Golden Triangle. I worked in the Golden Triangle. I call it the Golden Triangle for about 30 years and drove through it all every workday. And there's a lot of good area in there. However, it's prime area too for development. I noticed I believe West Chicago Industrial Park and Suncast expansions are not in TIFs as far as I know, and the taxes go directly to the taxing bodies right now. Also, I have it from my alderperson in Batavia, the building on the southwest corner of Kirk and Fabian in Batavia were not built with any TIF funds. So there's development going down there, and the taxes for those developments are going right to the taxing bodies right now.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Welcome.
Thank you. Maureen McKeough. I came tonight just to listen. I had no intentions of speaking, but given what's transpired, I feel I must say a few things. One is that I don't think my alderperson made any pretense of representing the entire East Side. She merely mentioned that she had constituents she was trying to represent, and I am grateful for that. The second thing is to say that I would appreciate it, Mayor Burns, if you would make a sincere effort to treat all the alderpersons the same. I have been here at several meetings, and I find that, for me anyway, some of your comments to some of them are intimidating and interrupting and caustic, and to others there's a great deal of leeway given. I'm quite sure you don't see it that way. I'm offering you my observation.
I appreciate
And
that.
asking you to be more equal to all of the council people.
Thank you.
Mark Sartell on Lexington Drive on the east side. As you know, I've been to many of these meetings, and we as east side residents have had a lot of comments about the development on Kirk Road and beyond. We are not against the industrial development of the east side. However, we do have concerns about increased traffic, pollution, noise, which unfortunately the residents of the east side have to deal with, not the west side. And I was a little disturbed by some of the comments and posturing about this being one community, and we should view this as one community. Having been a resident of the east side for the last 35 years and raising 4 sons in this community, I can tell you my sons are in their 40s and late 30s now. I can tell you when they attended Geneva High School, they were kidded about being from the ghetto on the east side. And that intimidation and that bullying continues today as I talk to our neighbors' kids who still get the same vibes from their friends on the west side. So as much as we want to say this is one community, there's still a lot of east side versus west side, and I don't think that's going to go away. It's easy to say that this is good for the city of Geneva. Again, we're the ones that have to deal with all the repercussions from this, and many of us feel, Alderman Maladra, that the gateway to Geneva doesn't begin at this industrial development. We feel it begins at the river, because we've been hearing about this improvement of the east side for many years. For the last 30 years, we've listened to it. State Street has yet to be rebuilt. Improvements on State Street have yet to happen, and we're about ready to move out of the community, and we haven't seen these changes. So, and I would echo the comment, Mr. Mayor, of some of the others, that we don't appreciate the intimidation and the bullying of our representatives here tonight. They are trying to represent us. We have presented them with questions that we wanted answers to, and I think it's below your office as mayor to conduct in this kind of behavior against your constituents on this council. So I'm disappointed by many of the aspects of this meeting tonight. Good luck to these developers, but we're the ones that have to live with it, and that's unfortunate.
Anyone else?
Brian Marr. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I feel that I should perhaps. Two things that I'd like to comment about. One is Alderperson Maladra, his comment about obviously diversity is good. The taxes would help homeowners. And when we moved here in '89, my taxes have gone up 7 times. They are 7 times what they were in 1989. And at that time, yes, there are more houses now, but there wasn't, Randall Road was not out there. The businesses, you know, State Street, they rolled up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock, right? There was no nightlife going on. Those of you who were here know that. So with all this added revenue, my taxes have gone up times 7. So I'm here to say that that really doesn't wash with me as far as what's going to happen, Mr. Blatter. And also, I know it wasn't appropriate when it was brought up earlier, but being public comment, I think it's wide open, right, basically?
Absolutely.
So if I didn't know better, if I were watching this on television and hadn't been through all of this up to now, I would think that MWI was an environmental steward and a wonderful keeper of the environment. And I think you all know that that's not true, because when we came here a year ago, once again, as I said it at the beginning, I'm not a NIMBY. I am not against development. This property is prime for that. One area, one building. Talk to us. 5,000 signatures on a change.org. Phone calls. You even said to me, Kevin, you got people calling them. You better tone them down. Well, I didn't control these people. I was not controlling them.
I never said that.
But, well, you actually said it in front of the chairwoman of Kane County Board, because we were standing there and heard you say it to her, that people.
Oh, so I didn't say it to you, I said it to her. Okay,
people
got it.
at MI
Okay.
Right, people
Got it,
at
okay.
MIF are receiving phone calls, and this
That's
needs
it.
to be slowed down. But my point is,
Not slowed down, I never said that.
well, it needs to stop, is what you said.
Tone is everything, yes.
Yes. I'm not as slick as you, sorry. I'm not, I get a little, a little nervous up here, but this is not a company that would do what they have done over there. I mean, I know it doesn't matter, right? We all talk, electric cars, man, hey, that's great. You know how many animals were destroyed when those trees went? You know what one 300-year-old oak can do? How many insects and birds and how many animals lived in that area, which they completely wiped everything out. My mom and her bird feeders, she said, you know how different it is now? We don't have the same birds coming. We don't have, it's just, I guess the point I'm making here is they could have really done some good and really made a name for themselves and trumpeted it. Hey, look what we did. We got this development. And look what we did. We worked with the people. The people had problems, and we talked to them. But you know what they did? They ignored us. And you're all here, and I know it probably doesn't matter, because, hey, it's about revenue. But, sorry. I'm just trying to include everyone there, alderperson. It's about the revenue, but, it's also about the kind of people you choose to do business with. And they're not the kind of people, perhaps, that some people would choose to do business with.
Anyone else?
David Walenciak,
Hi, David.
Lexington Drive. First of all, okay, being an East Sider, I was not against the industrial build-out from the MIF. I was concerned a little bit about some of the latitudes that we were giving them in zoning codes and stuff like that, when I have to have a house that has to have more space between the right-of-way and the road than what they are going to have with a 60-foot, 2-block-long building. Anyway, the only reason that I'm here now speaking is that next week, coming before this committee, will be the Venture Park. It will be, I think it's like 45, 46 days since we had the planning and zoning, and in less than a year's time, twice, we did get them to recommend to not approve or recommend that goes through. I just ask you, please, look at we will not be able to talk at that meeting. We ask you, please look at the videos, because if I believe that they have the opportunity to present again, we do not, so we can't refute anything that they say. Please look at the videos, understand why we're trying to save and maintain Kirk Road. I've heard some comments here that you have some concerns about maintaining Kirk, and I do understand, and I'm appreciative that the Couts Road extension will take some of the truck traffic away from. But again, this would be the largest warehouse in the area. So again, all I ask you is please look at what you're what your residents and that said at these meetings, and please look at that, you know. I guess what I ask, yes, industrial is fine, and I can understand the east side and the eastern border, don't have a problem. But at what point, you know, how far west do you go before you say enough is enough? Because now with the MIF being approved, you're gonna have 22 warehouses, either recently built, in the plans of being built, or to be built. So again, please look at those videos. That's all I ask of you, so that there's a fair hearing next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? From the dais, new business. Alderperson Kilburg.
Just a couple of points. I want to congratulate the Chamber. They had a very successful golf outing last week, and I know that the Chamber and the community has a big week ahead of us with Swedish Days and a lot of heat. And I know that the Chamber is reaching out and looking for volunteers to get involved in support of Swedish Days. And if you have some time available, I'm sure they'll have an opportunity for anyone, both here tonight or in the public that might be watching, to get yourself involved. The second point relates to safety in the community. And as I was traveling Fargo last week, I came upon an accident where a young girl was struck by a car as the car was turning off Fargo. And this young girl, fortunately, was not seriously hurt. But to come upon the accident and to see the possibilities of what might have occurred, to see her sandals in the street yet from where she was struck, and the damage to the bicycle, it could have been a lot worse. So I guess as we move into summer and we have a lot of activity on our streets, we got young people that are riding bikes, and I live on a busy street, and I often see young people on the sidewalk with their bikes, and they don't stop before crossing an intersection without looking. And I'm afraid that that was the case with this accident that I came upon. So I'd encourage parents and grandparents to have conversations with their young people to make sure that they observe safety rules when they're riding their bikes in the community, especially this upcoming week, because we're going to have such an influx of visitors and an increase in traffic and people that are trying to avoid the festival, that are meandering and working their way through the streets without attention probably to speed. So with that, just a thought, and hopefully we can prevent someone from getting seriously injured.
Anyone else from the dais? New business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the city council meeting. It's motion by, that was a close one, Kasserag. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, folks. We'll take just 30 seconds or so to move on to the committee of the whole meeting. Microphones are off.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting for Monday, June 17th to order. And note that all alderpersons and the mayor are present. I'm Martha Paschke. I have the honor and privilege of serving the 4th Ward alongside Alderperson Mayor. The first item of business on our agenda is to approve Committee of the Whole minutes from May 20th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Marcus is first, get a second, then.
Oh, sorry.
Marcus
I'm
and
trying to do this really
Okay,
fast.
M&M.
Okay.
Then you can say the M&M.
Mark's with the motion, Mayor with the second.
Voice vote, all in
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item of business, 3A. Item 3A is to consider draft resolution authorizing the purchase of underground cable and material in an estimated amount of $171,310.93 through Sourcewell contract from Wesco Annixter.
So moved.
Moved by Bruno, second by Bowering, and Administrator Dawkins.
So earlier, we rejected bids for labor for the underground cable program. In this case, we are recommending the purchase of the materials for the program, as due to lead time and variances in prices, we just want to make sure we have what we need once we get the labor. So if you have any additional questions, Director Babica's in the back.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, sensing none, voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Item 3B, consider draft resolution waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the purchase of Solenis polymer during fiscal year 2025. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Bowering, second by Bruno.
Okay, so this is basically an annual purchase. We have evaluated multiple alternative types of polymers based upon effectiveness, feed rates, and cost per pound of sludge processed. That evaluation determined that the Solenis was proven to be the best polymer for the sludge at the Geneva wastewater treatment plant. So we did receive a quote for the two types of polymer due to seasonal needs, and they are both provided with no cost increase over last fiscal year. And again, we have Director Babica in the back, who is more than happy to talk about polymer and sludge.
Favorite topic.
No more about that sludge. Any questions from the council?
Do we have a fixed cost on this?
It was in your packet.
Okay, it's
and
just not in this motion, 150?
Yeah, and it's to the budgeted amount.
Okay.
So my apologies.
No, if we could just,
Sorry, I
can we
turned
do
off my
that for
microphone
next
too.
week when we vote?
Yep, absolutely.
Please, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Seeing none, sensing none, voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Point of
Item,
order. Could conversations in the council chambers be please carried to the outside?
Yes, Alderperson Kilburg, we will. Join me outside, we got some people coming to us.
Item 3C, consider draft resolution authorizing the purchase of a backhoe in the amount of $122,263.57, including trade-in, through Sourcewell contract from Westside Tractor Sales. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Bowering, second by Ozatai. Marks?
Okay, so the fiscal year 25 budget has funds allocated for the replacement of a backhoe purchased in 2014. The unit is recommended for replacement by the fleet maintenance supervisor due to years in service and repairs completed to the backhoe. It is used on a regular basis for emergency and non-emergency repairs to the water distribution, wastewater collection, and storm drainage systems. Staff is utilizing the cooperative purchasing agreement with Sourcewell for the purchase, and with the current unit included as a trade-in. And again, you got Director Babica in the back with any additional questions.
Any questions? I thought I saw a hand. Seeing none, sensing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And item 3E is a presentation regarding public. D. I'm trying to go fast. All
No,
right,
you're
sorry.
going fast, it's great.
3D, consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Geneva Construction Company in the amount of $2,416,985.05 for the 2025 street and infrastructure project. Do I have a motion? Another tie. Motion by Bowering, second by Bruno. Administrator Dawkins, it was, oh,
You're a
did I?
ventriloquist too.
Did I not?
I think it was Kasserad.
Was it
No,
Kasserad?
it wasn't. It was over the side.
Oh, okay, Kilberg. It was Kilberg. I swear I heard it over here. Second by Kilberg.
I swear it came from there too.
Yep, me too.
Okay, so the.
my second.
No, it's good, it's good.
The 2024 infrastructure project includes roadway restoration, storm sewer replacement, drainage improvements in the Scott Boulevard area, seal coating of the water treatment plant and fire department number 1, apron replacement at fire department number 1, sidewalk ADA ramp replacements, as well as pavement markings throughout the city. There was a map of these areas included in the packet for your review. Warm mix asphalt was mandated as an eco-friendly surface material in lieu of hot mix asphalt. 4 bids were received, with the lowest responsible bidder being Geneva Construction Company. They are pre-qualified by IDOT and have performed satisfactory work for the city of Geneva for several projects, including the last 2 years. And with that, again, if you have any additional questions about the street infrastructure project, the man in the back, Richard Babica, is your guy.
Do you have a question?
Yes. Would Rich be prepared to give us an overview of the timeline for the benefit of the public on when we can expect disruptions on East Side Drive, Geneva Drive, and what's the other one?
Westfield.
That's Westfield, that's it. Thank you. When do they anticipate starting, and which one will they target first?
The contract's going to be executed on July 1st, and then there will be, by specification, there we go. Calls for a 2-week mobilization period, so the mobilization would be mid-July. And at that point in time, they have those 14 days to develop their schedule, and we can start getting the notices out to the public. East Side Drive, the majority of that work out there is actually curb replacement. Almost the entire curb is being replaced, along with a good significant chunk of the sidewalks to bring them up to ADA compatibility, as well as reconstructing the bike trail that's out there. So that is probably the logical place to start. Westfield, of course, is more resurfacing and spot repairs, as well as Geneva Drive.
So we're looking at probably the primary months of August and September, or July. Do you think we'll have anything going on in July?
I think we'll start the demolition.
Okay.
I would fully expect the demolition would start in July with construction, active construction beginning in August and September.
Is there any conflicts at all with the Couts Road project overlapping with some of these east side projects?
Were you referring to the North Couts Road project, which
Yeah.
we broke ground 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
That project, we're getting an update from ComEd tomorrow as to what the status of their utility relocations are, and we expect to be moving dirt out there within 2 or 3 weeks. The nice thing about the Couts Road project is it is basically a linear project from Route 38 to the airport. So the disruptions are really going to be focused in on that area. And it's a different contractor, so we don't have to worry about competing resources.
Good. That's all I had. Thank you, Rich.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Did you say, after East Side Drive, you mentioned the bike path?
Yeah, there's a designated bike trail on the east side of East Side Drive. There's a portion that's on the road, and then there's also a portion.
Okay, so not the Prairie Path?
Not the Prairie Path.
Okay,
It's the annex to the Prairie Path.
okay, gotcha.
Geneva Square, I think is what they call it.
Okay, and then the, what is being done on Westfield? What work is being done there?
Westfield, of course, it's primarily a resurfacing. There's one structure that's being rebuilt, as well as spot repairs of the curbs and sidewalk ADA improvements.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Any more questions from the dais? Seeing none, sensing none, voice vote sufficient? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Now 3E. Item 3E, presentation regarding public-private partnership opportunity for Geneva Business Park 3.
Sorry, you have to log in again. She went to sleep.
Should be good. Should be good, right?
It is.
Okay, so we're here tonight to talk a little bit about the public-private partnership opportunity that we have before us. So I've come, almost week after week and tried to tell you the progression of the work that has been accomplished, and tonight, with the annexation, we are ready to start talking about getting our business park Geneva Business Park 3 mobilized. So I just wanted to start out where we left off last time with the number 1 and our chance to diversify the tax base, which has been talked about a lot tonight. I didn't know that was going to be talked about. I did build it into this presentation, so you'll hear that a little bit again. But it is something that we look to this project to do. We have one financial tool, which is the TIF. We have one joint review board who has voted unanimously in favor of this project. We have one chance to move forward. So the city pursued a master developer. That was part of our strategic approach to this project. And the reason that we did that is because there were numerous owners. We needed to assemble land. We needed to understand the market. We needed to gain perspective from the private sector. We needed to obtain land rights for right-of-way, utility extension, and the substation. We wanted to share the risk. We didn't want to just build all of the roads and hope development would come. We wanted to do it together so that we could make the investment into the property and actually watch the development take place and get the tax dollars and the private sector moving along with the public. We wanted to minimize the public investment and maximize returns. So public purpose and benefits are community-wide, and they're not all about the tax base. They're also about our utilities, growing our utilities so that maintenance of the utilities can be carried forward by additional additional ratepayers. And our ratepayers in the industrial park are amongst the largest ratepayers by far in the community. We want to bring new employment and jobs, and new people will support our housing goals for affordable housing. It helps to create the demand and get attention for your community. We want to support our commercial establishments. I talked to restaurants. There's a few restaurants downtown. They're not even open for lunch. Why? It's because we don't have a good employment base during the day. This will all support the entire community having more people coming to town for industrial end users. This creates additional revenue for schools and no new students. So that's important because they're not creating the demand for more teachers and more facilities. We already touched a lot on the wetland conservation and stormwater management, alleviating some flooding that has been found there. And we have, of course, diversification and expansion of the tax base. So I know this has been talked about, but I do want to say a few more words about it. Because Geneva's property tax base is significantly reliant on residential taxpayers. And developing a resilient local economy through development of industrial has been a top goal for years. It's actually the mission statement of the whole Economic Development Department. Our mission statement is to serve the community by attracting appropriate commercial mixed-use, office, research, and industrial developments to the city as a means to reduce reliance on residential property taxes. Commercial and industrial developments are essential to fiscal stability and a vibrant local economy. They're less costly than residential development. They don't have the direct demand on police and public service. They don't have the demand on schools. Due to external circumstances such as state cutbacks to tax revenue sharing, unfunded mandates, rising personnel costs, a heavy reliance on residential property creates an environment where it is very, very difficult to meet municipal and school responsibilities within a reasonable tax rate. So in this current climate, additional commercial development, retail and office is very unlikely now and in the future. There is a limited market for office buildings. Commercial and retail footprints are shrinking, and some of our large commercial holdings have recently sold for a lot less than they were sold for 10 years ago. And that's going to have an impact on our tax base because when property sales impact what the assessor does with those buildings. Industrial development is the one way we have to diversify the tax base, and the market is strong for industrial. The central Kane-DuPage submarket has historical low vacancy rates and absorption rates higher than the average. So now I'd like to try to give a little bit of a big picture of the project. It is anticipated to be constructed and fully occupied in 10 years. Construction's expected to begin in 2024 with infrastructure improvements. Construction is anticipated to begin on the first building in 2024 for completion in 2025. The total project budget is $296.7 million. Costs are categorized on the slide. To assist, I want to talk a little bit about how we worked to create the public-private partnership. To assist with that, the city uses a third-party development advisor to conduct a review of the developer's request. The city's consultant is SB Friedman and Advisors. Caitlin Johnson, Adam Daniel are here tonight representing their team. The developer also used a third-party consultant, Cushman Wakefield, to aid their formation of the requests and the negotiations. The city uses a third party for multiple reasons, but the main reason is it's required by the TIF Act. So the TIF Act requires you to have a third-party review whenever you're looking at a rate of return analysis. So next, I'm going to go over the broad strokes of the methodology for reviewing the deal points. And Caitlin and Adam are here to answer any specific questions you may have about their work and their analysis. So the type of financial analysis we undertook was a but-for analysis. The process began with a financial review of the developer's request for assistance and the accompanying application materials. These include the developer's budget, the operating pro forma, the sources of funds, the structure of assistance requested. A main component of the financial review is benchmarking the key assumption driving their financial model. So for the development budget, SB Friedman benchmarks construction costs using industry sources and national recognized suppliers of construction materials to determine whether the project's hard costs and related soft costs are in line with industry standards. For the pro forma, SB Friedman benchmarks rents, absorption, and disposition values against market data to validate the developer's operating assumptions. So we're not just taking what they're telling us, we're making sure that it's lining up with what everybody else is seeing and doing in the market. So next, we're taking a look at the incremental revenue projections. Those are prepared to provide a framework so we understand what type of investment is possible for the development. These are independent increment revenue projections that are specific to the improvements within the industrial park that will be constructed as proposed and approved tonight. Finally, SB Friedman conducts a gap analysis to evaluate the developer's returns with and without city assistance. SB Friedman then prepares a financial model that includes the construction budget, projected operating revenues, expenses, and debt, and calculates the financial returns for the project. Yields with and without assistance are benchmarked against average returns for similar real estate projects as reported by key industry surveys and resources. Once project pro forma data is verified and understood, the teams work to define terms and make final decisions on deal points that will close the gap and allow the project to move forward in the framework that can be successful given the market climate. So what did the analysis determine? The analysis indicates that the project requires city assistance to achieve market acceptable rates of return. and therefore to be financially feasible. As the SB Friedman's estimated that the project would generate an unleveraged internal rate of return of 3.1 without assistance, below industry benchmarks. Probably not going to find a developer that's going to do it at that level. So to close the gap, the project requires approximately $42.8 million in financial assistance, which is approximately 14% of the total development costs. With the assistance, the project then will generate an unleveraged rate of return of 7.1, which will help make the project financially feasible. As we've discussed, the need for assistance is driven by the substantial upfront infrastructure costs required, including nearly $25 million, which will be incurred prior to constructing the first building. So that's what we call a very heavy lift. So what we're proposing is a financial partnership that anticipates tax increment financing as the primary tool to support the project. The project will be initiated with developers starting the construction of the public improvements and constructing the first building. When the first building receives occupancy and public improvements are completed, the city will initiate the use of the TIF financial tool. And I think this is a really important point because there's been a lot of talk about the city doing this or that, and that has never been proposed. It's always been an approach based on improvements being completed. So the use of the TIF tool includes the issuance of a bond to reimburse some initial public improvement costs, followed by a pay-as-you-go approach. So it's a combined approach. So let's first talk about the bond. The bond will be a special revenue bond with incremental property taxes from all project PINs pledged as the primary source of repayment. The bond will be issued after the first building receives a certificate of occupancy. Bond proceeds available to reimburse the developer will either be $4 million or $5 million. And that's going to be dependent on what's going on around this project, the adjacent development status, external to the project. That's because there's work that needs to be done to complete the water main loop at the south end of the property. So all bond issuance and capitalized interest costs associated with the bond will be included in the bond amount and will be supported by increment from the first building. And this will all be verified at the time of issuing the bond. We'll be talking about this again. We'll be talking to bond counsel. We'll be talking to our financial advisors. We will make certain that the funds will be there to pay the bond. So the city anticipates that $4 million of the net proceeds from the bond will be reused to reimburse the developer for site preparation and construction of the roads and underground utilities. So the funding at this juncture of the project assists in achieving construction of the embankment needed to conduct Couts Road at Route 38. That's a significant expense at that intersection. So going back to the water main loop, if the developer needs to construct the water main loop because other developments are not approved or they don't move forward quickly enough and we have to put the water main in, the city will be agreeing to provide reimbursement for this work with an additional $1 million available from the bond proceeds. So that'll be the difference between the 4 and the 5 million. The need for the developer to install the water main loop to extend service to the subject property is all dependent on timing and feasibility of neighboring developments. The IEPA is going to require that water main to be looped. That's good engineering practices. They don't allow dead-end water mains. So if the water main loop is not completed by other developments, then the city would need to perform that work. And it makes logical and fiscally responsible sense for the city to ask the developer, who's already mobilized out there, to please finish this work and we will pay you back. This is a good thing for the city in the long run to have the work completed. So that's the bond structure. So next, we'll move on to the pay-as-you-go portion of the project that includes the city issuing the pay-go notes by the city against the future increment. So the maximum principal amount will be $38.8 million. And sources to pay these notes will be from the net increment from the project pins. So just to overview again, the pay-as-you-go process will start at the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the second building. In terms of timing, the public-private partnership is structured to limit as much risk as possible to the city. The project will be initiated when the developer starts construction of public improvements and finishes construction of the first building. The TIF financial tool will not be used until the first building receives occupancy. The approach ensures that the city has desired outcome related to the infrastructure and that the increment will be available to pay the obligations. All bond issuance and capitalization costs will be built into the program and the end amount of the bond. The pay-as-you-go process starts with the issuance of occupancy for the second building. Again, this limits the risk as there will be additional increment available to reimburse the developer. So when increment starts coming in, how will we look at that? How will we prioritize that? The city will have the first priority for repayment of the city bond annually. After the bond payment is made, 5% of the remaining annual increment will be held in reserves, up to an amount to be later defined by the city's financial advisor and bond counsel, and bond underwriter, excuse me. The remaining annual increment net of the city bond requirement and reserves will be split annually between the city and the developer. Specifically, we're going to do the 20-80 split. The 80% will be available to the developer and 20% will remain in the special tax allocation fund for the use by the city. So the financial analysis determined that there's over $50 million in eligible TIF expenses that can be reimbursed on a pay-as-you-go basis. As shown, there are about $38.8 million of costs attributable to site prep and public improvements, which is informing the amount of the pay-as-you-go portion of the project. Because doing so will be in the city's advantage, the city will permit other TIF-eligible expenses to be included in the pay-as-you-go scenario. These will include costs for property assembly and soft costs associated with delivery of public improvements, engineering, architecture, and consulting fees. Each year, the city will certify TIF-eligible costs and issue payment on the bonds annually upon compliance with a host of different payout conditions that are similar to what we've seen in other redevelopment agreements. Proof from contractors, liens, that types of things. So in the last slide, we'd like to talk a little bit about development shares, which is what we always talk about when we propose projects. And so we have a total project budget of $296.7 million. We have the developer carrying about 86%, with the city looking at about 14% based on the $4 million bond and the pay-as-you-go scenario. When you add the electric enterprise investment, which is currently already underway, it changes a little bit. So I know that was late, and that's a lot of information, so be happy to try to answer any questions for you. As I said earlier, Caitlin's here to talk through any of the slides that were shown.
Alderperson Mayor.
I had a couple of questions. What is the special tax allocation fund? Kind of,
That's the fund that you need to set up when you have a TIF district. So you have to keep the funds separate, and that's where you put the increment every year.
So
And
in
then
our,
you-
in our budget, we have a TIF 2 fund, we have a TIF 3 fund.
Right.
We would then have a TIF 4
TIF
fund.
4 fund,
And that's
so-
where the funds would go, so they stay, they don't get commingled, they stay within that.
so it's not really special, it's just the TIF
Well,
allocation fund.
you have to audit it every year
Yeah.
and report to the state controller
It's
about
considered a special revenue
that
fund.
fund. Yeah.
So,
So that's all that 20% is it's going toward the TIF budget.
Increment.
The incremental. The increment is going to the fund, which is the TIF 4 fund.
yes.
Okay. On the budget of eligible, or the budget for the, that one, future Couts Route 38 intersection upgrades. So I'm a little disappointed that there's a cul-de-sac instead of a connection at Couts from the start. Is it only 350,000 to make that go through, or is
No.
that just for the intersection cost for the
Right.
signalization?
So actually, that has to take time to be built. There's a great deal of grading. A lot of dirt needs to be moved from one end of the site to the other. And then that dirt has to settle. And so
So
it's
the
gotta take
settling
a
time.
while, yeah.
Okay.
I would just mention that, when we started this project, there was actually, a proposal to, build not as far, build Couts Road not as far, and the city, actually requested that the road be built further, and the developer has agreed to do that at a great expense to them. But that is, we were pretty happy that they did agree to that, because we were working with the fire department and different
So the
departments.
cul-de-sacs further
Yes, the
than
cul-de-sacs
what they
further.
wanted to do, which was
Yeah,
probably
from what they
shorter.
originally proposed, so,
So the Couts Road embankment will have settled most likely by the time the first occupancy is issued, and then it would be connected? Is that the
probably
idea?
not. I don't know the exact timing for that, because, it has to be determined, how, when it's ready. But in our agreement, the phase 2 comes between 1 to 3 years. And it's actually to the best interest of the developer to build it faster. It's to the best interest of the city too, but it'll make the park a lot more marketable. I think that when you're trying to attract tenants and you tell them, yeah, that road's going through, it's a lot different to actually see it there, so. I
Well,
think-
except it'll be their private road for a little while.
I think everybody has a mutual agreement that that road is to the betterment, which is why we're here, proposing what we're proposing, so.
Okay. That's all I had for now.
Alderperson Kilberg?
Yes, as it relates to the last point there, the future Couts Route 38 intersection upgrades, $350,000. That $350,000 figure, how was it arrived at? Because I can remember when the overpass was constructed over a decade ago, that there was discussion when County Board Chair McConaughey was serving, that there was an opportunity to extend Couts and to do the necessary fill for somewhere around $900,000 to $1 million. So am I correct in assuming then that the $350,000 is really labor, and that you're not having to buy, because at that time it would have been private property, and that the fill would have had been brought in from another source? Is that the differential then between what it would have been 10 years ago versus the figure that you're representing here?
I mean, I can't answer to what was looked at, you know, in the past. But I think it's important not to try to pull it out of this budget too much, because there's mass earthwork and mass excavation and utility work and road and pavement and curb line items. And I think that you have a lot of those things intermixed in there, and it's not just one isolated number. I think that that number is kind of like the final things that you have to do, but you've done all of that pre-work as part of these other categories, as part of the mass grading of the site and the mass earthwork. So it's kind of all, because there's a master developer, they're able to do more swaths of work to add to that project.
And when we're saying the upgrade, then we're talking really about the fill, because the road pavement, curbs, and et cetera, the paving of that portion, or the fill to achieve grade,
Anybody else?
and to make that intersection passable, there's really two different elements that are involved here then, right?
I think there's probably more than two.
Yeah.
I mean, you have mass earthwork, mass excavation, utilities coming through there, roads, pavements, curbs, lighting and landscaping. That's
Sure.
all part of the signalization.
So the number that you're showing there, is that the result of the fact that all the fill is going to come from the site and from the developers then? Or is there gonna have to be fill brought in? In other words, do you feel that there's an excess and there's enough dirt that can be moved to create that fill?
They're shaking yes.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're saying yes, yeah. So they're bringing it all in from other parts of the site.
Okay, so in other words, there will be no need to purchase fill from outside of the site.
Correct, that's what they're saying.
Is that, yes? And your name? That's the only question I had right now. The other question I have is that the council has a policy that meetings that go beyond 10 o'clock are at the will of the council, and we haven't had that vote yet. And we're 25 minutes past. Isn't that correct?
No, it's an introduction.
No, it's just a presentation.
Yeah,
There's
this is just the
So that
presentation.
when,
But we
yeah, it's a presentation, so when it comes before you, you understand what came. And I would say, and yes, you're correct, they have a policy. The only other item on the agenda is a closed session to update the council on pending litigation, which we can defer till next week if
Yeah, I'll do it
desired.
next week.
May I just add something? It is an introduction, and I please ask you to contact me. I'm happy to talk this through with you and, you know, explain anything that I have information about. I've worked on this project since the first day that I started here. Mary McKittrick threw the plan at me, and that was, you know, a very big priority. I am not an engineer. I don't know all the details, but I do know a lot about this project. It's been through so many iterations, and it has been a lot of work to get this project to this point. You know, it's been a difficult night for many of us, but I don't think we should lose sight that this is a proud moment for us. We have, the city created the plan in 2012, and it has worked to be implemented. And planning and implementation of planning is a very difficult thing in light of the economy. We had a pandemic. We applied for a Rebuild Illinois grant. There's been a lot that has been done, and we truly have a very strong partner sitting behind us, a partner who is willing to step up every time the city said, can you build the road more? Can you fund the application for this grant? You know, the answer was always Yes, we want to be your partner. We want to be in Geneva. So please come and talk with me. I know it's late and we're tired. I'm happy to do that at your convenience.
Alderperson Swanson.
Will you provide this to us?
Yes.
So that we can ask informed questions?
Yes, we always put our presentations on the city website. I'll make sure that you see the link to it and have access to it.
Thank you.
Alderperson Bowering.
I just wanted to extend my thanks to Kathleen and her department and all of the staff that has been working on this project. I know it's been a tremendous amount of work. You just outlined some of it, but thank you also for bearing with us tonight and staying late to give us this presentation. And thank you just personally. Every time I've had a question about the project, I know that I've gotten a prompt answer from you or Stephanie. So thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you for your presentation, Director Timochenko.
Thank you.
Item number 4, we're at public comment. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to comment at almost 10:30? No? I don't see anyone. Item number 5, new business. Any new business from council members? No?
6 will be postponed to the next week.
All right, item number 6 will be postponed, will be covered at next week's meeting. And that gets us to item 7. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Motion by Marks. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Nice job.